Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work, so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Somebody, anybody, really should tell Adam. See you at the garage.
Welcome one, welcome all to SimSpeed TV one final time for the Majors Series in 2024. The Pacific region has reached its 10th round Formula Majors at Circuit Zandvoort. The Mercedes F1 car from a couple of years ago is going to strut its stuff around this very tight but fast Dutch Grand Prix track, and we are going to crown a champion. To bring it to you live here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Kick, it's me, Reese Gardner, with Lynn Kinchelow with me in the commentary box. Dan Yeaman's going to be joining us a bit later on, and Jay Kennedy is behind the scenes, pressing all the buttons behind the scenes and bringing you these live pictures. Lynn, it's time for one last rodeo, as it were. We are going to crown a champion at a classic Grand Prix circuit, which has spent a bit of time away from the Grand Prix world from the mid-80s to the early 2020s, but I think Zandvoort's lost none of its charm, even though the layout is very different.
There is something about beaches and racetracks that just naturally go together. While it's not directly on the beach, this circuit Zandvoort is a challenging, flowing circuit with lots of variations, really quick straightaways, and some interesting high-banked corners. Turn number 3 especially comes to mind right there. You'll see cars sliding all the way up by the wall, almost trying to do the high line, the Pearson line, trying to get as much velocity as they can off that corner right through those S's. And it's a fast flowing circuit, and it's also incredibly compact at just 2.6 miles. It's going to be a very crowded qualifying session here this evening.
Oh, it certainly is. We've got two servers of drivers looking to try and get into the Q2 session. Basically, the way things are going to work tonight is the event pre-qualifying has effectively counted as Q1. Q2 coming up in just a moment is going to be a 20-minute session where we have two servers of drivers. The top 20 will advance to the 20-minute Q3 session for a 72-lap race, and it's going to be just an out-and-out Formula One race without any safety cars. So we'll have to go through the strategy information very shortly. Before we do that, time for the standings. Christian Challoner on top ahead of Ross Banfield and Justin Morton. Dallas Pataska and Nathan Dowd rounding out the top 5. There's definitely going to be a change for who's in P4 in the championship, because Pataska and Dowd currently equal on points.
And the key thing to remember here, Ross Banfield has to win this upcoming race in order to have a shot at the championship. All Christian Challoner has to do, make the top split, and finish at least 7th or better to guarantee himself yet another Mario Andretti trophy. So, going to be a really interesting Q session upcoming right here, because in order to be in the title fight, you got to get through the Q sessions.
Yeah, absolutely you do. The Legends Championship for drivers over 50 years of age is actually quite close between Daniel Stevens and Wayne Hutchison. There's only 55 points in between them as things stand, and Gavin Barber only a further 33 points behind Hutchison, with Brian Barnes and Brian McGreevy breathing down Gav's neck. That's going to be a massive fight here in the Legends standings. Apart from that, the drivers are very far separated. The team's championship is belonging to Dog Bear Bark for the time being. Mega Racing team, 130-something points behind them, and it's unclear whether or not they'll be able to gain the team's championship coming out of this round.
And the other thing to keep in mind with teams, there are no drop weeks, so every finish that they can get matters. You take your top 3 results, so the best so you're going to want as many of your drivers up there in the front of the field as you can. So this fight's still wide open, especially in a car that doesn't necessarily suit Mega Race Team's driving style.
Yeah, certainly. It's going to be difficult for many drivers here, just because this car is so hard to drive, and you have to take into account tire compounds as well. This being a Formula One style race, you have to use 2 tire compounds over the course of the race, and from past experience here on SimSpeed TV, the hard tires don't work very well here at Zandvoort, so you're going to have to really push on the soft and mediums, try and get that little bit extra on one of your stints. There's going to be at least one point where every single driver will be on tires that are not in their prime phase.
Yep, and we're kind of looking at potentially at least 2 pit stops for sure, maybe 3, depending on how the tactics lie. I don't foresee the race server necessarily being cool enough to offer an opportunity for a one-stopper, but you never know. It'll be on a different server. Right now, conditions would favor a one-stop, but this is just the qualifying server.
Yeah, absolutely. The qualifying server currently with a 79-degree Fahrenheit track temperature. That's 26 degrees Celsius for those of us here in metric land. Not much wind, which is good. These cars being very aerodynamically sensitive, they tend to be affected quite a bit by wind. But there's also a fair chance, the relative humidity, a fair chance of a dry race here. There is 0% chance of precipitation throughout the rest of this session, but we're unsure how things are going to go when we get to the race.
Unfortunately, the W13 is not one of the rain-enabled cars, so for better or worse, Mother Nature will play nice with us today. She can crank the humidity all the way up to 100, but she will not be able to bring a rain cloud over this beachy course. And I mean, what else is there to say? It is a Formula One race. It finishes off the season. This is probably the most difficult car and track combo you could think of to round this championship off with.
Yeah, indeed. One more round to go and one more charity to support for the Majors Series. The supported charity for this round is Best Friends, which helps to give cats and dogs all across America second chances and happy homes. They help dogs and cats that have been abandoned or given to shelters find new homes and avoid the unfortunate fate of being put down that happens to so many dogs and cats all over the world in developed countries. So if you want to lend your support, just as the drivers of the majors have by buying extra laps in pre-event qualifying, head to bestfriends.org to lend your support. Well, the drivers have completed what I presume to be their briefing, and now they're back out on track trying to get their final laps in, and it always blows my mind when we get to the final round of a Majors season here, Lynn, just the speed that these cars have. It almost looks like Austin Milwain is going in fast forward at the moment.
Even though the W13 was not exactly the best car of its year, it is still one of the quickest machines ever released onto the iRacing surface. You saw right there, just going into that very short straightaway, nearly 300 kilometers an hour, and he's going to exceed that easily to here down the front stretch. DRS open, full ERS deployment right there, then completes a practice lap, jumps up to the second position here in free practice. A lot of tactics to be considered here in the qualifying. How many people have filled up for 3 or 4 runs in one stint, or who's going to focus primarily on just coming out of the pits and launching it straight away?
Yeah, that is the big question. Ross Banfield currently on top in the pre-event practice, so we shall see what he can do to put down his laps in the Q2 session coming up very shortly indeed. We're looking at lap times of around about 1 minute and 10 seconds on average throughout the field here. Zandvoort has an awful lot of corners and an awful lot of racetrack to negotiate, but it is quite short for a Grand Prix circuit, and most of its corners are very fast, so the cars are rapid around here.
Yep, short course, short times, and the other thing to keep in mind, just the 2 DRS zones that you have to navigate. You see Banfield has just entered the detection zone for the front stretch DRS. Activates right there, strangely enough, right before they hit the high banked final quarter, which is surprisingly, it gets very tricky. If you catch that corner wrong, you flip that DRS up, and the rear end doesn't like losing all that downforce. It's a very big death wiggle that you're going to get right there. Practice circuit navigate turn number 3 right here. Nice arc right there. He keeps it just below the white line where you do have a little bit of room to work with, but just right now just trying to make a good exit off that corner, go through the S's, and sweeping down into that right-hander. If you can take that flat out, that's really the best way you can do it. Oh, and here's the other thing about open qualifying. So many cars just trying to complete their runs. Get out of the way as fast as you can. Here's the detection zone for zone number 2. Comes around the bend, pops it up one more time, and you're off to the next braking zone.
Yes, of course. A bit of a lock up there coming into Hans Ernstbocht. A very difficult sequence that before you get to the final couple of corners. Just like that, we're already at the end of the lap again. The DRS will be available to be used in the zones for everyone during qualifying, but during the race you have to be within 1 second of the car ahead at the detection point in order to use it. So keep an eye out for that. Drivers will be looking to desperately find their way to within that 1 second margin so they can get that little bit of speed boost. Justin Morton, meanwhile, another driver taking the very wide line through Hugenholtz, and unfortunately, that's what happens when you get it wrong. Massive crash for the driver in P7.
The main thing to keep in mind in the qualifying trim, the MGU, the battery system deploys right at around 90% throttle, and especially coming off of turn 3 right there, there's so much temptation to try to get on the gas as soon as you can, but when you hit that 90% threshold, that's when it kicks in, and that's when the car starts to unload, so it's very easy to spin out right there. There's a couple of other corners. We'll see if we watch Challenger if we get to one of these zones. Well, he's back in turn number 3. So right there, that's when you want to have the ERS kind of kick in, right when you get to the flat part, and then you're just going to launch your way up the S's right here. You might lift off here a little bit, turn that ERS off, and then kick it back on right here. And then it's just a matter of, here's another slippery spot right here, and sometimes if you get on the gas too quick, it'll snap right there. But Challenger, ever constant professional right there, former world driver in the NASCAR side, able to keep the car planted on this mock qualifying run right here. And then coming, here's one more slippery section that's going to be so critical to get right there. You're coming off of that little bit of banking off the corner, and if you slip just there, it's very uncomfortable because the car will just snap around, and you're going to look like Lance Stroll looked last week in Brazil.
Yeah, definitely. We don't want to do a stroll now, do we? It's going to be difficult to avoid that though, because yeah, like you say, it's a very complicated car to drive. It's just a difficult car to drive, even if you're not fiddling around with the ERS over the course of a lap. Well, that brings practice to a close, and for now, it looks like Ross Banfield is the man to watch. He'll be the one looking forward to getting into this. So. The top 10 drivers, I believe, from each qualifying session will make their way through to the final race session to make a full grid of 20 cars here in Split 1, which will be broadcast here on SimSpeed TV. So with all of that, the practice session has already ticked over to qualifying, and we already have cars out. We're focusing on Justin Morton at the moment, and Morton setting a 109.8 in practice. That was good enough for P7. He'll be looking for a little bit more here.
I like this strategy right now, just being the first car out onto the track. Good opportunity to potentially get some clean air and try to get that banker lap in. On this out lap, you see he's working with the DRS right here, just to make sure he has that point picked out perfectly. Most likely, he'll have the ERS deployment set to done to try to preserve as much of that battery as he can, and then he'll flick it over to qualifying mode right here. He waits to turn the DRS on until he gets onto the front straightaway. That is a valid strategy right here for opening lap. If this is his flyer, he'll have the battery in attack mode, and he's going to go launching it right here into turn number 1.
Absolutely. You want to try and get the DRS open as early as possible during the race, but in qualifying, maybe it's better to have that stability and use the the power of the full ERS availability to launch yourself around this lap. Coming into Skyblock, this corner is fearsome for sure, shifting down into 6th gear and trying your best to keep the speed up coming through the twisties. This is a very difficult right-hander. There's easy to run wide of the apex. It's not the end of the world if you miss that apex, but you want to try and hit the inside of this corner here. There's a very technical section in the middle of the circuit, and then a very short blast down to Hans Ernst Bock, braking at 100 meters and trying to fling it into the corner as best you can. Maybe should have gotten to the inside a little bit earlier there for Justin Morton, but this is still looking like a clean lap. This is going to be a good banker here at the start of the session.
Yep, looks like he's got good DRS deployment right here. He's got to come down to the start-finish line right there, and he gets a 112.141 to open up the session. Now he's going to turn that ERS back off, start building the battery back up. It is a viable strategy to make multiple runs on the same tire compound here. We are one up from where real-life Formula 1 is. I believe this is the C2 tire compound that's going to be the soft. So somebody has gone smashed in the background. Meanwhile, we look at Christian Challenger right here, also on his first run, and he has the benefit of a little bit of a draft as he gets the DRS open. Does that help him with his lap time?
Yeah, let's see, a 109.5, and that is just ahead of Aussie Mill Wayne. Nathan Dowd currently in 3rd. Brenton Foster puts his first lap on the board, and it's a 113.6. That's a bit off the pace there. Most drivers were able to set a 111 at worst in practice. Dallas Pataska here. I believe he was the car that we saw crashed a little bit earlier. He's made it back out onto the circuit, and we'll be having another run at his lap here. Just over 16 minutes to go in the session, and we still have to see big improvements from certain drivers. Justin Morton at the moment is setting a time good enough for P4. So we're going to see here what happened to Dallas Pataska coming into Hans Ernst, and he just hit the gravel. That spun him around there, and it was a very light hit to the wall, but it was enough to take off the rear wing. Drivers do need to be careful of that in the race, Lynn, because if the rear wing gets taken off, it's usually race over in an open wheel car.
At the very least, it's going to be a very long pit stop to get that fixed. There is spare cars available in the feature races for all major series events. This round is no exception. And I would expect with these guys not necessarily having the same level of experience that drivers that you would see here on SimSpeed in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour, I expect a few of them may have to lean on that spare car at some points during the race, especially if you slip up at turn 3, you smack that outside wall and you do some floor damage to the vehicle. You start just losing time everywhere. That spare car becomes mighty tempting early on.
It certainly does, but you want to try and resist that temptation because you only get one. It's all about preserving your car towards the end. Gav Barber here trying his best to get a time on the board that reflects his practice pace. 1:11.0 was Gav's fastest. His current fastest in qualifying is a 1:11.5, so needs to improve by at least half a second in order to match his practice pace. We'll see if this lap is good enough for him. All the way to the inside through the Arie Luijendijk bocht, named for the Dutch IndyCar driver, and a 1:11.2. That is a solid improvement. It's only going to grant him one position though.
And you notice he goes immediately into the runoff area to tow. Most likely that was the second run of 2 that they'll fuel up for. A lot of guys will focus on running well as soon as it's in. Ross Manfield jumps to the top with a 1:09.51, bettering Challenger by just a couple hundredths of a second. But back to the main point. A lot of these guys would be fueling up for 4-lap runs, and they'll come out of the pits, they'll charge for that first lap, turn the ERS off, rebuild the battery, and then go again either on the third or the fourth lap. So you just have to see how these tires form as they get these runs built up.
Yeah, indeed. Sometimes the tires just don't get in their optimum phase by the time you start on a lap here. Of course, these being F1 style tires, the grip can fall off very quickly, so you do need to be very careful to drive consistently and carefully and not burn up those tires. Challenger across the start-finish line will take the top time back. 1:09.2 is now the fastest. It's a shade slower than what we've seen in the practice session. Remember, Banfield topped the practice session on a 1:08.796, the only driver to get into the 1:08s so far. So let's see what Banfield will be able to do to improve on this time. He's just gone to second as Challenger took that provisional fastest time back. It looks like this might be the start of another lap for Banfield, as we can welcome Dan Yeaman to the commentary box in just a few moments. We'll, for now, ride with Banfield, carrying a lot of speed there through Hugenholtz, and you saw how he was straddling the white line there. That is technically the fastest way around, but you need to be confident about it.
Absolute confidence and absolute bravery, because that left front loves trying to lock up going into that corner. Sweeping around these right-hand bends, it's just incredible how quick these W13 race cars travel around this small Zandvoort circuit. Already halfway through sector number 2 right here into the DRS activation zone, and he's going to get a little bit of tow from what looks to be Stuart Elder just ahead of him on the track. Elder trying to set up a run of his own, and I think Banfield has timed this absolutely perfectly. If he doesn't bobble right here, he may be on course for a really quick time.
He absolutely nailed the run between the last couple of corners there, and out onto the start-finish straight we come, and this is going to be it's going to be a 1:12. It looks like Banfield might have been gearing up for a second lap there, which means he's probably going to be compromised on this one. Regardless, turn our attention to Nathan Dowd. Let's see what Dowd will be able to do here. 109.7 was his fastest lap in practice. He's already quicker than that in qualifying, but he's only just going to start this lap now. Use all of the curb on the exit of Tarzan at turn 1 through the Gerlach Bocht. Very difficult corner. For my money, one of the most difficult sequences on the entire circuit, that going from Gerlach into Hugenholz. It's a crazy direction change, and you got to focus on the changing elevation and the changing camber of the track all the way around here. That's understeer through Skyblock, and he's going to go off. That lap will be invalidated.
Yep, track limits are very, very permissive around this particular course, but we can't do a whole lot if you're off in the gravel trap. So that lap is completely gone. Meanwhile, go back and look at Christian Challenger. It looks like he is starting another stint. And from the looks of things, he just bobbled right there. I don't think he got these tires up to temperature right quick, and immediately he dives off, and I think he's going to take a tow right here. You are allowed to tow right here.
Now, we're going to get a replay here of something that we're told we need to watch out for in the race. Oh, yeah. That's that a little bit wide on the pit exit. If you cross that white line, you will get a black flag for an unsafe pit exit. So the drivers will need to be very careful of that. You have to negotiate the inside of turn 1 on your way out of the pits, and it's very easy to get on the throttle early, but this track can bite.
Yep, and another thing to keep in mind if you're coming out of the pits, up in turn number 2, for whatever reason in practice, I've always got the yips coming off the pit road right there. For whatever reason, it'll just snap to the right, and if you do that in the middle of the race, it's going to be a very bad time if you try getting on the gas too quick or letting off too early and let the cold tires not let it sit.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Tasca now trying his best to improve on 4th. As we enter the final 10 minutes of this session, we need to keep an eye out on that P10, P11 area, because remember, we've got 2 servers going at the moment. We aren't broadcasting the other one, and the top 10 from each of those servers will be put together into the 20-car field for Q3 and the race. So Sebastian Jackson is the man who's on the bubble, in danger of being overcome. Drivers like Ryan Steele in the number 12 and Stephen Verweyen in the number 8 will be looking to improve. All they need is a few tenths of a second, and they are in the top 20 overall for the race, as we can bring Dan Yeaman in. Well, Dan, 8.5 minutes to go, and the pressure is starting to rise.
Well, looks like it indeed. Thank you for having me here today, Reese and Lynn. And we're seeing who can master these last couple of runs around Zandvoort. I had a chance to run around in a completely different car. It was the Radical SR8 and also a national configuration, so missing all of the top half of the circuit here at lovely Zandvoort. But I can say I have got myself caught out by the pit exit you're just noting there. That'll be one to watch out for in the race if drivers get a little greedy there. As Banfield at the top of the charts once again, 94 thousandths of a second ahead of Christian Challenger now.
That's a good lap there from Ross Banfield. Really love that. We're going to. I've been noted. There's a clarification to the rule set here. The top 30 will advance to Q3, which will be attached to the Split 1 race server, and the top 20 from that Q3 will advance to Split 1 and stay in the server. The bottom 10 will join Split 2. So do apologize for not quite being across those rules. So for the time being, it looks like everyone is safe to get into the Q3 server, but once we get into that session, Lynn, we're going to be focusing on P20.
And right now, I would say take a look at P15 right here. Brian McGreevy is currently in at a 111.175. So he's going to be very borderline getting into that Q3, so we'll take 15 from here, we'll take 15 from the other server, and then we'll mash them together, and then we'll really have a jam session with 30 cars on the track at the same time. That'll be pretty crazy. But I digress. So a lot of drivers have at least managed to match their practice runs. So now it's a matter of what can you do with these cars. The setup wise, these things are very restrictive, surprisingly. Mercedes basically just put the whole thing together at the factory, and then you come to the racetrack, and there's not a whole lot you can actually change. What you can change is software. Change the differential. You might take out a little bit of preload on the entry, or add a little more on the exit. Try anything you can do to get a little more bite off the corner to try to get some more speed, but at the same time, you're already on a razor's edge, so a lot of these guys might be trying to push it a little too hard.
Yeah, indeed. And another thing to highlight, Dan, is the fact that in Formula One you are allowed to change to some extent the differential settings on the fly in this car. Not many other cars where you're able to do that.
No, not at all. Indeed, this is a very unique sort of car for us on the simulator side for us, and the things we usually see here on the iRacing service. And yeah, so drivers have a lot of control at their fingertips, how they want to be tweaking things to maximise their pace at particular points around the circuit. And whether drivers are going to go to that level of fine detail and adjust settings for specific parts of the track, I think is maybe something we maybe reserve for the really top end of town, if they're really chasing every last fraction of a second, which might be needed here for Christian Challoner to get back ahead of Ross Banfield, for example.
Yeah, for sure. Banfield at the moment looking, well, somewhat assailable at the top of the standings. He was certainly a long way ahead in practice, but I think the extra traffic and the extra pressure in qualifying has meant that he's not quite as far ahead as he wants. Challoner's lap here, Lynn, is going to count for a lot. Only got 4 minutes and 20 seconds remaining, and that means a maximum of maybe about 3 laps, maybe 2 hot laps that you might be able to set.
Definitely 2 hot laps based off of ERS deployment. And another thing to keep in mind, at the far end of this field right here, where Banfield and Challoner are, they're essentially safe in going into Q3 and into the race server. So these guys, Banfield has to go and set a 1:08.937 right there. He's just got to go pop it off if he wants to. But I digress. You're already basically safe up here at the front of the field. So you're just making practice runs here. Maybe keep into the back of your head what kind of conditions the race server will be on. This server right here, where we're at, is static conditions. The track has to change from the 79 degrees Fahrenheit, the low wind speeds. So, but once we get into the race session, we'll have dynamic weather. It could spawn hotter. It could spawn colder. We could have a weather front be moving through. We could have some of that beach air just sort of come up and bring the humidity up to the track. Who knows? But right now, these guys are trying to get these last laps in, and still right now, take a look at 15th right there. Gavin Barber has managed to fall. Actually, I was going to say Brigreevy has jumped up to 13th. That's moved Gavin Barber back to 15th.
Yeah, indeed. Just a couple of minutes remaining to get these final times on the board. Banfield looking quick as per usual, but he loses it in turn 1. Maybe the diff was a little bit too open on corner entry there, Dan.
Looks like that might have been a possibility. Yes, and it's a tricky corner there, Tarzan box, because now with the reprofiling, there's a lot of potential to really get on the power early, but therefore get on the power too early, as we watch here for Justin Morton across the start-finish line. No DRS open on this lap, so this would suggest that, not flying along here as Challoner and Francis cross the line, but seeing no improvement on the tower for him there. So focusing here on Morton in 3rd place. Can he get closer? Can he get ahead of Challoner for 2nd in Q2 here?
Well, it's a good run through Hugenholtz, and he's managed to keep things nice and stable. Last time we were running on board with him in VR, Morton made a mistake at that corner. So let's see if he'll be able to get to the end of this one down through Skyblock as Nathan Dowd improves to P4, puts Ozzy Milwane back to P5. Nice and smooth on the run here for Justin Morton. Looks like he's barely pushing it all in. It seems this lap is just going to be another tour around Zandvoort to make sure that he has everything in order for Q3, which is where the fast laps are really going to count.
Yep, and a really shallow exit off of that hairpin corner at the end of the chicane. Let's see if he deploys the DRS right here. Yes, he does. Take a look at the steering wheel. The 4 green lights on the left side, just underneath the little timing bar. Let you know that the DRS is open. So he's going to take this lap to a 111.672. And we'll see if he tries to push any harder right here. Kind of doesn't look like he does. Banfield's back out. He'll try to make another push run.
Indeed, this being an open qualifying session, as long as you cross the line before the time hits 0, you will be able to complete your laps. So drivers starting their laps now are perfectly fine, and I believe it will be the same in Q3. So 108.9 for Banfield. Will he be able to make any improvement at all? Banfield is looking like the driver to beat in this round, and don't forget, he's not far behind the championship lead either. Remember, he's second in the standings coming into this round. So keep an eye out for Banfield. Remember that he needs to win and have Challoner make a big mistake to allow himself the opportunity to win the championship. Of course, the zoom here is a little bit misleading. We are still looking at Justin Morton's zoom feed there as we look at Banfield make his way around. So if you're confused as to why the driver didn't seem to be doing much work, it was a different driver. Here comes Ross Banfield into the final couple of corners and to the Arie Luijendijk bocht. Fantastic, flat-out banked corner, carrying as much speed as he dares onto the start-finish straight. DRS wide open, and another 1:12. I think that might be a race run that we saw him doing there, Dan, as the session is now over.
That sounds about right indeed, to be a couple of seconds off his personal best in the session as our last couple of drivers make their way across the line. And at the very last driver out on track is going to be the 87, Sebastian Jackson, but I don't think Sebastian's pushing on this particular one here as he brings it around Arie Luijendijk. In fact, he's already holding hard on, so he will head for the pit lane. Yes, he will head for the pit lane. So that will be the end of Q2 here in the top split of the Pacific region for the Majors Series here at Zandvoort. And now it means we just wait to see and confirm who will be joining us from the second split session for the 30 cars that will make it total going into Q3.
Yeah, indeed. So at the moment, everyone you see on screen is safe into Q3. So Banfield, once again, the only driver to set a time in the 108 bracket. Keep an eye out for Morton, Dowd, and Milwayne to potentially make some improvements in Q3, and Challoner will be feeling the pressure as well. He does have a clear championship lead. All he needs to do is finish high up, and he'll have the championship wrapped up. But that 3.5 gap at the front, Lynn, is certainly going to be weighing on his mind.
It may be 0.3 of a second here, but you don't have to worry about it anymore. We're going to reset the field and go again in Q number 3. So none of these times will really matter except for seeding in Q number 3 right here. Yeah,
exactly. So let's see then how things work out in the midst between these two sessions. We've only got a couple of minutes before the Q3 session goes up. So for that, we're going to step aside very briefly here on SimSpeed TV. You're watching the final round of the Majors Series, Formula Majors at Zandvoort.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series in officially licensed cars engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Somebody, anybody, really should tell Adam. See you at the garage.
You're watching SimSpeed TV Round 10 and Round Final of the Majors Series Pacific Region for 2024. Formula Majors, the Mercedes W13 F1 car at Circuit Zandvoort. We are now into the final stages of preparation for the 72-lap race here to come. Reese Gardner, Lynn Kinchlow, and Dan Yeaman in the commentary box with you with Jay Kennedy on the buttons behind the scenes. And Lynn, now it's time for Q3. The top 20 times from this 20-minute qualifying session will keep them in split 1. Everyone else is going to have to go back to split 2. So this is where we really have to start focusing on that lower end of the field, see who can get those lap times down.
And a lot of things have changed between Q2 and Q3. We're going to add another 11 cars to this particular run, up from 19 from previously, and we'll have 30 of them right here. Another thing, the track has got a little bit of rubber washed away from it, which is Martin's having a little bit of netcode shenanigans, I think this is. I digress. And also, the weather has warmed up considerably. The track temp has jumped up from 79 degrees Fahrenheit up to 88, which will preclude any one-stop strategies in the race, at least for our server right here on the SimSpeed Esports Network. And now it's just time to get down to business. We're straight into Q number 3 right here. No practice, no faffing about. You're just going to have to get to the car and go.
Yeah, absolutely. The pressure will be on here, Dan. We're waiting to see if there's any run-ins that happen on the first hot laps here. Gav Barber in particular going slow to let a few drivers by. We see this all the time in real-world Formula One qualifying sessions. Lapped cars or slower cars getting onto their laps, potentially getting in the way of drivers who are trying to go fast.
Yeah, this is looking absolutely frantic on my version of my track map. I'm seeing actually the only space that we've really got on circuit is in front of the number 68 of Brian McGreevy. There's a good chunk of gap, and maybe the same for the 35 car, which, pardon me, belongs to Greg McEney. They're basically the only two spots of clear air I can see on the track. Everyone else is more or less bunched up and got someone nearby. They have to worry. It is Brendan Foster that were on board. I believe actually got right behind him Ross Banfield at this particular time, as well as he will round box 13. Turn 13 there in Dutch, and then straight onto the Ari Ugendijk box for his first flyer by the looks of things here. Let's see what the number 11 can do, as the first couple of times have come in already. And in behind him, I think Mansfield just gone P2. That's P4 for Foster here in the number 11.
Right, so the first salvo of times have come in, 14 times being set so far. So we shall see exactly how the times get down here. Once we start getting 20 or more times, we'll start to see the big guns come out. Justin Morton is now your new fastest driver in this session, only 27 thousandths ahead of Austin Milwayne. Man, the times are looking incredibly close. We're waiting on those improvements from Banfield and Challoner. We're expecting them to be our front row here, Lynn.
Yep, but the track is warming up, so that's going to sap a little bit of speed out of this track. What adjustments have you been able to make to accommodate this track temperature? And also, the rubber's gone way down. In Q2, we were at 100% rubber, and we had about 2 hours worth of practice running to get that grip moved out to where these cars really like it. Here, it's very thin. It's very close to the racing line, and these guys are just, if you go outside of that grip, English difficult. If you go outside of where it's rubber did, it's very slippery, and you're not going to have a good time.
No, certainly not. Nathan Dowd, though, is going to brave the safer barrier up the top of Arie Luyendyk and try and get the best run he can onto his hot lap here. Coming into Tarzan, and just in time for someone to emerge from the pits behind him. Other than that, looks like a relatively clear track ahead of Dowd from what I can see. Shouldn't be experiencing too much aero disturbance. That's the thing about these cars, Dan. The W13 is from the current era of Formula One that ostensibly made the cars a bit easier to follow each other, but aero disturbance is still something you really got to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, for all the benefits that these cars in ground effect do have, they are certainly going to be susceptible to disturbance and lose that air over the top of the cars, which is still an important component to the overall speed that these cars can make. As focusing here on Nathan Dowd, running 6th at the moment in the qualifying session, but he's nearly 8 tenths off of Justin Morton, who's gone to the top at the moment, has done so far. But the other thing I'm seeing here is just congestion is still going to be a huge problem, and we're already nearly halfway into this qualifying session. And the other issue, definitely seeing mistakes from drivers as well playing a part. There's a car that just had a moment up at block 9, which might be Joseph Bowman in the Triple 2, but he's got out of the way, thankfully, and cleared the track. But it's just things like now drivers putting the power down and losing the rear end as Christian Challoner at the top of the charts for the time being. As eyes on Stuart Elder here around Arie Luyendyk to see if he can improve on 15th place.
All right, 15th is currently a 1:11.4, and it's a 1:11.0 for Elder. That puts himself up into P12, but it's immediately assumed by Bryce Roberts, who gets into the 1-minute 10s for the first time in this session. Justin Morton currently second place, 1:09.7, his fastest lap so far, and we'll see what he can do on this one. It seems, Lynn, that these guys are taking a couple of laps to really get their hot laps going here, and from your comments earlier, it's largely to do with building up the ERS for that big run. But unfortunately for Morton, he's going to have some traffic in one of the most difficult parts of the circuit to pass.
and it's going to be very tight out here. He manages to make it work, and I think he's going to get away with that, maybe losing about half a tenth to a tenth of a second of that lap. Cars just diving out of the way, trying to make sure that they don't inhibit or impede the progress of guys on flying laps. This appears to be a push lap to me, because his previous lap was a 1:13.008. That's definitely within the time frame of a no battery lap. You might see some 13s later on in the race when we have full fuel loads. Currently zipping around right here through Sector 2. That was a very quick run right there. Into the DRS deployment zone for the front stretch. Pops that open immediately, and looks like he's going to be close to getting it improvement, but not by much. Just a 1:09.517 picks it up 0.2 of a second.
Yeah, and that hasn't improved his position any. Banfield, meanwhile, has gone fastest, and once again, he's the only driver to set a 1:08. Whatever he's done to his setup, however much practice he's done for this event, it's working out for him. Banfield is pulling out all the stops here to try and take that championship from Christian Challoner, but it's going to be a massive ask for the 777. Adam Johnson setting up for another lap here as he comes into Tarzan, and we've had most of the drivers set a qualifying time so far. Right now, Dan, on the bubble, Gav Barber, 21st place. He is just on the verge of having to go into split 2. All he needs is a couple hundredths of a second, and he'll be in the top 20.
A couple of hundreds, yeah, more anything. It's a couple of thousandths. That's how close it is for him here as he rounds the final corner here. Ari Lubendorp setting up for a fly here now. The DRS wide open as well, we're just told Dallas Peteska has no time, but that would say otherwise. I've been told no, it's literally come in as we were looking at Gavin Barber. So P7 for the 023 machine is somewhat safe at this stage of the session, as the two drivers I'm seeing without a time, Brian McGreevy, who's just had a moment down at I think it was Hugenholtz Bocht, and Greg McKinney as the other driver who's yet to get time on the board. Other drivers outside looking in, it is pretty tight in and around that area. As speaking of, Gavin Barber's just dropped backwards. More people are shuffling him down the order here, Lynn. So got to watch out for drivers here like Jason McSparrow now looking outside in at 22nd.
Yep, these lap times are just going to come fast and furious at this particular point. The track is slowly starting to creep up in temperature, so if you're going to make a quick run, you want to do it as soon as you can. But at the same time, I still see a few cars just sort of kind of chilling out in the pit road right here. We're on board with the 22 of McSparron, trying to get a lap time in. This looks to be too far back to be a push lap. He's already in the mid to fives, and he's over here in the bank corner. So I think this is going to be a get up to speed run. He might have this timed pretty well with the car up in front. Yeah, it's a 1:12.129, only about half a second off of his fast lap, but immediately pulls over. Maybe had a little bit of an upset stomach over there at the S's trying to get this lap done.
Yeah, indeed. I couldn't imagine racing one of these cars in VR. It's enough of a fast-forward slideshow making your way around here on triple screens, let alone a single screen. So, yeah, my upset stomach would probably be a factor here. Timothy Klaus coming out here, and Klaus is currently in 22nd place. We've seen improvements from Barber. He's managed to get up into 17th. Currently the driver on the bubble, Wayne Hutchison, the number 17, with Brian Scrivener just outside the top 20, and it's only a matter of a few hundredths of a second between them. Banfield, meanwhile, coming out of the final corner here on another hot lap, and we'll see if he improves here as Mill Wayne gets second over Challoner, and a 1:08.6 from Banfield. Dan, that is just stonking pace here from the 777.
Well, if you thought he could go any faster, apparently the answer was yes, I've got more. Come at me. And no one has an answer for him yet. The gap now nearly half a second back to, as you said, Austin Millwayne up to second place in front of Christian Challoner, who had a moment in the Hugenholtz Bocht and had to bail out of his most recent attempt at a flyer. Justin Morton, on the other hand here, exiting the Hans End chicane to see if he can improve on P4. He's right behind Challoner when it comes to lap time. He's, that's 2 tenths down, my apologies. That's 888, not 0.68. So not too far behind and looking to try and get some distance to Brendan Foster as across the line. He will find a couple of tenths, and it will get him ahead of Christian Challoner there into third place.
Very nice from Justin Morton, and Challoner is looking a little vulnerable here, at least for a position in the top 3 or even on the front row. Millwane's looking super quick himself. So if Banfield were to win, where would Challoner have to finish in order for Banfield to get the championship?
If Banfield does what he needs to do and wins this race, then if Challoner finishes 8th or worse, the title goes to Banfield. But again, that assumes that Challoner has some kind of incident during the middle of the race. And the further back he falls in qualifying, there's the potential does exist for incidents to happen, but you don't want to ever risk it. So really all Challoner just has to do is just not make a mistake during the race. Just let Banfield run off, do his thing, and then just try to keep the car underneath you. And if it all works out, it works out. And if it don't, well, you could say you did the best that you could over 10 races this season.
Yeah, of course. I think in terms of just outright form, Challoner has been one of the stars of this season. Banfield has certainly made a name for himself in 2024 as well. So whichever of them comes out as the champion in the end, they will be a deserving one. Under 4 minutes to go in the qualifying session. That's a big improvement that just happened there from Nathan Dowd. He's gotten ahead of Pataska and Santana to round out the top 6. We're waiting on more laps from Adam Johnson and the like outside the top 20. Hutchison, meanwhile, gets into the top 20. Remember, he was potentially on the verge of falling into split 2, but looks like he's done just enough there to get himself in. But all it's going to take is an improvement by 1/10 of a second or maybe a little bit more from drivers further back, and you will see a lot more drama happen for that bubble just inside the top 20 places. McGreevy, Dan, has still not set a lap time here. We don't have a read on his pace.
Yeah, this is going to be problematic, I have to say, for Brian. He's got to put something on the board and get it to hook up. And the other big thing looking at is we've got a car behind him. Is that Banfield? I think it is Ross Banfield right behind him as well. So he's going to try and push, but it looks like Banfield with the DRS open presumably was going to push, but he has backed off a little bit now, realising the situation it seems. Although, again, gains a huge chunk of time there to the Hunstone chicane. Does that weigh? I wonder if that weighs on the mind of someone like Brian here, knowing you've got the fastest driver in the session who's just closed up on you on this lap. So you're trying to get your fast lap in as he comes to the line. Will McGreevy get one? A 12-1. It will be on the board, but it's outside the 20.
28th, though. Hashtag not last for Brian McGreevy as he loses the nose coming into Tarzan there. So the bubble for the time being is between Gavin Barber and Brian Scrivener. Gavin is in danger of falling out of the top 20 once again, so we do need to keep an eye out for that. It's a reasonable gap between them.
So sorry, Scrivener has just left the pits to start his next outlap by the looks of things as well.
Yeah, so this will be Scrivener's one and only chance to get into the top 20 there. Remember, it's an open qualifying session, so you get to the start-finish line before the time hits 0 and you'll be able to complete your lap. Anyone who's out now, they're only going to be able to get one in, as Jake Fox puts in a very nice lap there to elevate himself all the way up to 18th, and Jason McSparron improving to 21st. Gavin Barber, in the space of a couple of moments, has fallen from 20th to 22nd. This is an absolute slugfest, isn't it, Lynn, for drivers wanting to get into split 1?
In the blink of an eye, the gap between 20th to 21st went from 0.3 of a second down to 1/1000th of a second. That is between Joseph M. Holman in the UDocs Frank machine versus Jason McSparron over in the... Unfortunately, I forget which team he's on, because we can't paint these cars. Hello, Mercedes, Toto. I would like a can of paint for this car, please. Thank you very much. But I digress. The positions change rapidly. Holman suddenly jumps up with a 1:10.873, jumps up to 16th. That's relatively safe for the time being. 45 seconds left to go. You haven't left the pits by now. You're cooked.
Oh yeah, you absolutely are. The latest you could leave the pits is basically 1 minute and 15 seconds to go, and we are well past that now. We're in the final 30 seconds of the session starting now, and Gav Barber here is looking to make that improvement and just scrape in to the bottom of split 1. 1:11.2 is his time. He needs to gain basically 0.13 of a second in order to get into that top 20, but there's loads of other drivers out there who are looking to try and improve. It looks like Fox, Hutchison and McSparren are all done, just ahead of Barber. Behind Barber, Timothy Klaus and Don Dolson will not set further times in this session, so it's all down to Gav here. See if he can keep it smooth through Hans Ernst and through the final 2 corners here, Dan. Let's see when he snaps the DRS open whether or not this lap's going to count.
It's looked okay for now, I think, as he rounds Ari Lewandijk box. He's going to put his foot all the way to hammer as it comes to the line. Is it an improvement? 10.896.
Wow!
It counts and he's in.
Nicely done from Gavin Barber. Gets into the 1 minute 10s, gets himself into split 1. Brian McGreevy made a late improvement up to 24th, but unfortunately that's not going to be enough for him to get into split 1. Last couple of drivers here with Damien Colty setting an 11.9. That is not going to be an improvement, and then all we're going to do is keep an eye on Bruce Jones here. 27th place, 11.6 is his time. Needs to set an 11.1 to get into the top 20, and it's not going to happen for him. So, wow. Gavin Barber found exactly what he needed right at the end of the session there. What a fantastic Q3 session. We'll say goodbye to positions 21 to 30 for the time being. Our grid is set, and we can go through it now. Dallas Pataska. Sorry, no, that's not right. Goodness gracious. Christian Challoner, not even in the top 2 here, but I think before we go to the grid, we can have a little bit of a sneak preview, I think, for next season. The international region, which is what we were broadcasting on SimSpeed before this year, is returning starting in January. So if you're in the Australia, sort of Asia Pacific sort of time zone, then make sure to get your registration in at majorsseries.com if you want to get in on this action. We'll be broadcasting it right here on SimSpeed TV starting in January. It's time, though, for the race, and we can go through our 20-car grid for Formula Majors, the final round of the season. Will Ross Banfield be able to take the title? Well, we'll see, starting from pole position alongside Austin Milwayne. Christian Challoner, championship leader coming into this round. He needs to finish in the top 8 if Banfield wins. He'll be starting in P3 and could be crowned champion by the end alongside Justin Morton. Brenton Foster and Dallas Pataska on our 3rd row, with Nathan Dowd and Kevin Santana in 7th and 8th. Nathan Dowd, of course, in the championship top 5. Stephen Verwyen and Brian Barnes will round out our top 10, Lynn.
And we're just going to move right along. It's a very short build-up right here. Austin Peterson and Ryan Steele make up row number 6, it is. Carrying on, Stuart Elder and Nick Kuhn, Dogbear Bark, carve one of their cars very far back here. If he can move up some positions, he can defend against the Megas all the way at the front. Dan Stevens and Sebastian Jackson make up the next row. Continuing on, Joseph Holman for Udox Frank. Going to be a friendly ally to Ross Banfield on the field if he gets through there alongside Gavin Barber. And then we round out our top 20 with Bryce Roberts and Jake Fox. I hear revs, Reese. How about it?
Here we go. The green flag has flown and we are away. Oh, everyone was struggling there except for Brenton Foster. Look at that run that he's got. He's going to try and go for 2nd place around the outside of turn 1. What a start from Brenton Foster alongside Aussie Milwayne. They just avoid making contact coming into Gerlach Bocht and then into Hugenholtz. The drivers on the outside will have the advantage. Look at the launch.
And it's a very close start for this particular point. Remember, top split, 2 or more vehicles coming together will result in a virtual safety car. We already see Joseph Holman has suffered some rear damage. He's got to go immediately to his spare car, and he's going to have to limp that thing around because he didn't take the tow alongside Brian Barnes, who has missed a front wing. So there's all sorts of carbon fiber strewn about turns 1 and 2.
Yeah, indeed. It's not ideal there for Homan or Barnes. They'll be crawling along at the back of the field as we very quickly get this replay at the start, Dan, and we'll see what happened here.
Yeah, Brian Barnes, what he spun was, I saw him spinning on the way into turn one. He's there on the inside in the blue and yellow, and locks the rears up, and he's going to clip the fence, and that's where he loses the front wing. So I thought there's been trouble live. Ryan Steele at the last two, he's getting two other cars with him, and Ari Lugo. Big trouble there. Dan Stevens has been collected by the incident along with Nick Kuhn. The virtual safety car comes out as a result here at the end of lap one.
Good Lord. That was a massive crash, and we'll instantly probably have to go to another replay here. All the consequence of Ryan Steele going for a spin out of the second last corner. It just seemed like the traction broke for him before he even got to the curb, and unfortunately didn't quite hold the brakes as much as he could have. Ended up taking out Nick Kuhn and Daniel Stevens and quite a few other cars besides. Big slowdown from everyone else behind. It was well avoided by the cars behind him here, but Lynn, that's what happens when the tyres are cold.
Not only are they cold, this car is exceptionally vulnerable to suspension damage, and when a tire falls off, the brakes don't work on that particular corner, so even if he's got it held down all of the way, the car is just going to keep on sliding. And the key thing to keep in mind, this is a virtual safety car, so Ross Banfield is now holding on to the field at about 70 miles an hour pace speed. The pits are still open, but it's early enough to where I don't see any takers for a pit stop. You take a look at the tire selection on the left side. A lot of people starting on the mediums, going for the optimal strategy of start on mediums and try to switch your way over to the softs. And then we see why Austin Milwayne had a really good start. He started on the softs. The contrarian strategy so far is working out for him.
Yeah, certainly. And remember, this is run to Formula One rules, which means you have to use at least 2 tyre compounds in the race. The drivers who started on the mediums will switch to the softs later on. Drivers on the softs will have to switch to the mediums at some point. And considering the softer tyres don't last as long, Dan, we're expecting those drivers on the red tyres to pit first.
We should indeed. I mean, what's interesting here is this obviously is a very early version. We are going to have drivers into the pits. Pataska comes in as one of our soft shod runners. Now, it's going to be curious to see if we get a tyre compound switch from Pataska, because this would technically the compound.
He's going to the hards.
Oh, this is a big gambit, and I can say I've not run this car competitively or kind of car like this competitively for quite some time, but I can say from past experience with the old McLaren MP430, going to the hard compound is not usually a competitive strategy option. You just literally lose too much pace on the stiffer tyre, despite the fact you can go long.
Yeah, I mean, our producer, Jay Kennedy, has a lot of experience viewing races in these cars, and he told us before we went live that in the IGPS race at Zandvoort some time ago, no one went for the hards, and the drivers that did really struggled. So I think Dallas Pataska may have missed a trick here. I mean, the track temperature, like you said, Lynn, had risen since the Q2 sessions. It's a 32 degrees Celsius right now, which is reasonably warm, but I don't know if it's warm enough to justify the use of the hards.
When I was using it in practice for the Atlantic region, I was running a whole second off of a comparable fuel load with the mediums. So I don't know if Dallas just simply hasn't tried the hards yet and doesn't know how slow he's going to be, or is he thinking clever and he's thinking, you know what? I'm gonna pretend to be Alex Albon here. I'm gonna be a tire whisperer on this stint.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see, because we're about to get up to race pace again. Virtual safety car in, and the leader has been instructed to maintain 70 miles an hour or 100 kph. Leader can go green from the DRS line, so we are in the zone now for Ross Banfield. Will we see him go early, or will he wait until the last possible moment to go green? He's holding, and he is away when we get to the start-finish line. So, Ross Banfield leading from Ozzy Milwayne, Brenton Foster and Justin Morton. Christian Challoner currently in P5 as we ride on board with Foster, trying desperately to keep up here with Aussie Milwayne. And there's the spin there in Hugenholtz, and that's going to include a couple more drivers. He might have tagged Challoner, but he's definitely tagged Kevin Santana in the midst of all of that, who didn't really have anywhere to go.
That was, you know what I saw? These cars weren't swerving around, dragging the brake, trying to keep heat with these tires. And these things are very, very evil on cold tires. And I think that just caught him out right there in turn number 2, where I said it was going to be tricky on restarts, especially or coming out of the pits. So that's another multi-car collision right there. I don't know why we're not back in the VSC right here.
Yeah, well, look at this. This is a very lucky escape for Challoner. Look at how close this is. Bounces back onto the track and just avoids getting into Challoner. That was a matter of centimetres, if not millimetres there for Brenton Foster. And Challoner escaping with his race still intact, still running in 4th as Dallas Pataska makes a move on Bryce Roberts there to get up into 11th. We'll wait and see if this decision to go onto the hard tyres will pay off.
Meanwhile, at the front of the field, Ross Banfield immediately sets the fastest lap of the race, having had a full lap to get back up to speed. Kevin Santana comes into the pits, presumably with damage at this particular point. And right now, if you're Banfield, you're doing what you need to do. You are leading this race. Ozzie Milwayne is not really pressuring you that much, but it's you're keeping a decent gap to Challoner, who's back at 4th. And at this point, you do what you got to do.
Yeah, that's it. All Challoner has to do is finish in the top 8, all things staying the same. So he doesn't need to push. He doesn't need to go ham on those tyres. He can just keep it nice and stable, make those mediums last. We're expecting a 2-stop race here for just about all the drivers as Milwayne has charged up the ERS and the DRS, and he's going for the lead on Banfield.
Soft tyres doing their work now, it seems. Just the question is how long until the pace flips around the other way, but also now chance to see what will Ross Banfield do with being the car's second in line. So it'll be his turn. DRS on this lap to both the Hunza chicane and then down the start finish straight. Of course, that is relying on staying within 1 second of Austin, who has already pulled a 7/10 margin, and it grows as they go up through Shyvac and towards Masters Box here to 8/10 or thereabout. As we're focusing in here on Christian Challoner and Justin Morton right behind with Nathan Dowd, not too far out of the picture as well. And I was going to say that early VSC, helpful for the drivers on soft tyres, give them a bit of a reprieve and just delay sort of, I guess, the real push phase of the race, I'd say, Lim. But nevertheless, we obviously are still expecting things will turn around in due course. There's a gap down to half a second as they approach box 13 and RE Lewandike box as well.
Yeah, at this point, if you're Banfield, you're starting on the mediums. You can see on your telemetry that Milwayne is on the softs. You might as well just let him go for the time being. Let him burn his tires off. He'll have to pit sooner than you do. I'm expecting the softs to come in around lap 20, maybe 21 or 22 because of the virtual safety car. And then at that point, you could probably get about a 5-lap difference before your next pit stop. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, or actually on the screen right here, Dallas Pataska on those hard tires has somehow, either through luck or just avoidance of the wreck, has worked his way up to 11th. And, we have a car off right here. Who is this? It's Daniel Stevenson. He's looking the wrong way.
Yeah, Stevens was one of the cars involved in that crash, and careful, Dan. One of those cars involved in the wreck coming into Arie Luyendyk. So he's made his way back out onto the circuit. He's remained on the medium tyres, but things aren't going too well for him for the time being. Pataska, meanwhile, getting into the top 10 there. This is what happened to Stevens. Just got the wheels spun up over the curb. And, I mean, this is a Formula One circuit, so the curbs are nice, wide and flat, but they can still really unsettle the car at the best of times, Dan.
Yeah, they sure can indeed. And with the temperatures and everything, as whilst we watch there, the top 2, I've just seen change for 3rd place. Justin Morton has blown past Christian Challoner with the DRS down the start-finish stretch, and will take that podium position for now away from Challoner in the 78, of course. That's no real big deal for Christian right now, but it does mean he will now have dirty air on the front end of his car, and that might just mean a little bit more tyre wear, a bit more temperature that he's got to worry about, although being on mediums should have some decent endurance in those tyres, of course. Well, and that's probably the other thing to note for Austin Milwane as well, Lynn, is being on the soft tyre and being out in front as well. That's going to be beneficial for him. Just maybe give him another lap or two on the fronts that would otherwise be lost due to the extra aero wash that gets generated running around behind in second place.
Yeah, if Formula One cars are one thing, they are amazing time attack machines. And being at the front of the field, at the lead, that is the perfect air conditions right there for just running some time attack laps. Just, you don't necessarily need to be running your absolute limit because you're still full of fuel. These cars are starting anywhere from about 196 to 200 pounds worth of fuel. They do measure by weight. As Joseph Owen comes into the pits for another service, probably damage related, but I digress. But at this moment, again, you don't really need to do anything if you're Banfield. Oh, and we have lost another vehicle right here. Taking a look at the replay.
Oh, he tips it into Tarzan, tries to pick up the throttle, and he did the same thing as Stevens, but unfortunately couldn't avoid getting into the inside wall. Remember, Foster has already used his spare car, so I think that's just not worth continuing after that. Man, what a shame. We've already lost 2 cars from our starting grid, Homan and Foster. Homan spending a few laps out there and on the softs, and it looks like just wasn't able to keep it going there in the midst of all of the chaos that's been going on here. But guess where the incident happened for Homan? Exactly the same spot we're hearing out of turn 1. Get on the power out of Tarzan, touches the curb, and the car goes, no thanks.
I would like to take a look at this Pirelli signed ice up both close and personal. And that's going to be unfortunate for Foster. He's not going to be able to get to the halfway point to get full points. And that's going to be very crucial in the Teams Championship because that's 10 points to the finishing order. And that's going to give him the advantage to Belfair Park at this particular point.
There goes Christian Challoner up into 4th, and there's moves being made here. Gavin Barber and Sebastian Jackson side by side, which is going to give a little bit more of a run to Dallas Pataska, who's still marching steadily forward on those hard compound tyres. We didn't think that the hards would be anywhere near the optimal strategy here. It looks like Dallas Pataska might have had an ace up his sleeve. There's a pretty big gap ahead to Stephen Verweyen in 7th. It's around about 6 to 7 seconds ahead of Barber. So I don't know if Pataska's going to be able to hold on to this pace and maybe make some moves forward. Regardless, he's still looking really good at the moment for a potential top 10.
Yeah, in 10th, but in the 10 now, and we're expecting, well, everyone in front of him still got to make a stop to change tyres. If by chance those tyres can run all the way to lap 72, which would be a stretch even for these white sidewall set of rubber, that would knock out a good 15, 20 seconds or so of time loss to all the cars ahead of him. That, at the current point in time, would jump him all the way up to challenging for the back end of the podium at this stage. Side by side in front of him is Jackson with the DRS. Goes around the outside of Barber, and with the DRS for himself, Pataska will challenge around the outside on the exit of Tarzan block. Can he get the power down to get side by side? He can. It's side by side, reluctant backwards into the wall.
Oh no, and Pataska's race comes to a close, potentially. Might be able to get back to the pits. I don't know if he'll be able to. That looks like the drivetrain's broken on that car. He's not going anywhere. Oh, man. Oh, if only he continued from there, we would have been able to see what the hard tyres could really do. But the gamble for Dallas Pataska, the lottery ticket was ripped up in his face.
And at some point, you just have to be considerate of everybody else around you. I mean, take a look at the replay right here. I think this was an overeager move, truth be told. Tried to take it around the outside, and if you're not comfortable with being on the inside right here, you're going to try to take as much room as you can. And you know what? I take that back. I think our most infamous word in iRacing,
Yeah, potentially. I mean, looking at Barber, he was all the way on the inside of Gerlach Bocht. Like there was no way he could have avoided that. Netcode definitely played a part in that. I think maybe half a bit of overconfidence from Pataska and half Netcode from Barber. I mean, he couldn't have gone any further to the right, could Gav?
Yeah, and at that point, either you back out completely, which could potentially mess up your quarter entry, or you try to do what Gav Barber did and just try to run your line. And unfortunately, international differences. You have an international driver working against a Pacific driver. Sometimes the server decides, you know what, these cars were going to be messed up. Race Control has determined that incident was a net.
Yeah, indeed. Race Control right on that one. Mike Ouellette and Garen Batten in the server as Race Control here. Of course, Mike is the man behind the majors and its massive expansion in the past few years. It's one of the finest sim racing leagues out there if you want to test your mettle in various car track combinations and event formats. They compete for the Mario Andretti Trophy, which celebrates Mario Andretti's versatility. It's all about being able to be fast across any discipline of racing. Looks to me like it was Ryan Steele getting past Gavin Barber there for 9th place. And Barber will have lost a little bit of pace thanks to that slight contact with Dallas Pataska. Regardless, he's still going on. And meanwhile, the battle for 3rd re-emerges here. Challoner managing, he fell back to 5th, didn't he? And he was able to find his way back past Dowd. He's been focusing on charging the ERS for a run here, and he is translating that with the DRS coming out of the final corner, and he'll get back into the top 3 coming into turn 1. Morton will try to fight him, but at this point, I don't think there's much Morton can do. It's starting to run at a 78.
At that point, DRS is looking very strong, of course, given the fact that you open the DRS in between Bock 13, Nari, Lundak, Bock, and just carry it around the massively banked final turn here. Just so much speed already at that point. You can run it through that corner with a whole bunch of your downforce taken out of the rear wing. It means that it's pretty hard to put up a defense into turn 1 unless you go in that deep under brakes without the DRS. And at this point in the race, that would be probably not necessary, to put it mildly. Still very much in the fight there for 3rd, so best keep at it for a later time. Although on this particular occasion, no DRS open on the way down to the Hans and chicane. So in case of drop back at the DRS detection point halfway around the lap, or dropping back now a little bit more on the approach to his 2nd zone down the start finish straight. Let's see here as he comes across the line. No, just inside, as all the lights come up on the wheel there to indicate that one light for, correct me if I'm wrong, one green light to indicate you will get DRS, 2 lights for you're in the activation zone, and 4 lights when you press the button and the flaps open. Yeah, on the wheel.
Yep, you got it 100% right, Dan. Top of the class.
Yay.
Get an A+ from Professors Kennedy, Gardner, and Kinchelow. In any case, we'll keep our eyes peeled on the first scheduled pit stops for drivers in our top 8, because we're reaching lap 15 now, and if you're pushing on the softs, I think you're around about this point where you start to see the tyres fall off a little bit. If I just head back to the tyre graphic I was provided, 20 to 30 laps is the projected tyre life for the soft tyres. You can go 25 to 40 laps on the mediums. So keep an eye out in the next 10 laps or so for drivers on the soft tyres to eventually make their way into the lane. As things stand, we only have Milwain and Vawayan still on the soft tyres, so they're the ones that we're going to have to look out for.
And you don't necessarily need to get your compound change done in the first pit stop. Milwain could just as easily go soft, medium as a strategy, and that is perfectly valid. At this particular point in the stint, we'll say it's about 14 flying laps. I would estimate the softs would be about 16 life remaining, where the mediums will be about 70-ish. So there's still quite a bit of life left. A lot of what Banfield was saying to me in testing is the tires start to get very unhappy around the 30% mark. That's common across all three compounds. So I would imagine that Milwain has about maybe 6 or 7 more laps of good hard pushing before he'll start to feel the effects of his soft tires degrading.
Plenty more time to try and push and get ahead. At the moment, Milwain leading by 3.5 seconds over Banfield, and we'll keep an eye on the times for Challoner as well, because Milwain setting a 13.5 on that lap, a 13.46 for Ross Banfield. Challoner, meanwhile, it's another 6 seconds or so back to him, a 13.7. So Challoner, I think, is just minding his own business out there at the moment. He's focused more on the battle with Morton for the podium than trying to beat Banfield on track. If the race were to finish right now, Challoner would be champion.
Something to keep track of at this particular point. The current 5-lap average lends itself to the soft tire strategy right now. Ozzy Milwain is currently averaging 113.235 over the last 5 laps. By comparison, Banfield is only at a 13.381, and Challoner is further back at a 13.5. So, again, soft tire strategy seems to have worked for the time being for Milwain, but we'll have to see if this equalizes after the pit sequence has completely sorts itself out.
We're in that phase now, Dan, where we're just waiting for something to happen. Really, there was that explosion of chaos at the start, and then off the virtual safety car for the first couple of laps after that. Now everyone's in their rhythm and trying to focus on their tyre strategy. This battle for 15th is really the only clear battle on track outside of Challoner versus Morton, and then Barnes and Santana for 13th. It's the last 3 running positions on the road. Kuhn, Roberts and Stevens. All these drivers have had some kind of issue, but Bryce Roberts would be happy. He's up 3 positions at the moment.
Yep, little gains there indeed for Bryce, and that's what you like to see. The only problem for him is right behind Dan Stevens now is your race leader of Austin Milwain, and he'll be looking to lap these 3 drivers as soon as he can, because he doesn't want to be caught behind traffic any longer than he wants to, because in that last lap of the round he did lose a 1/10 of a second to Ross Banfield. The good thing, of course, for being behind lap traffic is he will get DRS here down the start-finish straight, as he did there into the Huns and chicane. So a little bit of extra speed once again from Milwain, but it doesn't mean he will have to maybe be mindful of backing up his brake marker. So he joins the DRS train here around Ari Rubendijk, as in fact one of the cars there is going to move all the way out of the way, and Roberts says, yeah, look, you're not my battle, let's just respect the blue flags nice and early. Stevens will leave the inside wide open for your race leader, and that little DRS boost has gained him about, well, looks of things, about 2 or 3/10 of a second on the last lap overall, half a second quicker than Ross Banfield, 13.1 place, 13.6.
Yes, indeed. Well, good job from Aussie Milwain up the front of the field. Interesting to note for Bryce Roberts, I've taken a closer look at his car, and it seems like there's a tiny bit of damage to his front wing. The left sort of edge of his front wing is a little bit knocked in, from my perspective anyway. You might be able to see it from the external cameras, but regardless, I think that might be part of the reason why he's pulled out there. It's very subtle. You've got to look very closely to see it, but it does look like the angle is just slightly different between those 2 parts of the front wing, as now Challoner is coming up on him to lap him.
Yeah, these Formula One teams will spend millions of dollars and thousands of man hours to get absolute perfect aerodynamic package for these vehicles, and it's the least little bit of contact that gets sensitive skew, and the whole balance of the car will change. The air being redirected. Take a look at the super slow.
Yeah, there you
see
go.
that
You
little.
can see the slight dent. Yeah.
I was gonna say, every little bit of air, as soon as it touches the car, it has to go someplace else on the vehicle to maximize the performance of it, and just any little sort of dent or crack or little piece of debris that might get kicked up by other vehicles, it's going to change the handling of the car, and oftentimes for the worse.
Yeah, very aerodynamically sensitive Formula One cars, as they have been since, I'd say, probably the early 90s at most recent. I mean, I think with the speeds that they carry, the only real period of Formula One where you could definitely run closely and not have to worry about aero push was probably the late 60s.
Yeah, you think back to earlier this season when we ran our historic race, the 1967 German Grand Prix at the Nordschleife. We saw an amazing battle between Ross Banfield and Christian Challenger, staying nose to tail for pretty much the entire event. But here, there's a whole seconds between them. Even though Ross Banfield is barely closing in, he's about 3.9 seconds off of Milwade. Challenger, 10 seconds behind. It's a vastly different battle compared to when they were racing in the Lotus 49 earlier this year.
And when they're close together like this, as you see between Chandler and Morton, you saw that the car of Morton was hanging back a little bit into turn one because he knew that there were fast corners coming up and he couldn't be too close to Chandler, otherwise his car would just turn into a boat. It would have no response at the front. So I think, Dan, when you're trying to do a battle in these cars, when you're trying to get past someone, basically you need to focus on the exit of the corner coming onto the longest straight, because then you'll be able to get in the slipstream, get the DRS, and then maybe have half a chance of getting by. It's not really a case of being able to be close and harass someone at every opportunity.
It's a very technical mindset and racing style that you have to bring to a car like this, and yeah, so dominantly and so reliant on being within a second of the car in front, getting a good exit off the corner, and utilising the DRS to maximum advantage. It may be a bit of ERS as well to give you extended battery power and advance that top speed for you down the straightaway to help sort of seal the deal, as it were, as we continue to watch your Challenger and Morton go fighting over the final spot on the podium. So it was Norway clearing some traffic on the way out to Schleibach, which is going to give him a few more seconds of clean air, and holds the gap at around 5 seconds, or I should say the gap's slowly inched out to about 5 seconds. And that last lap in particular, he pulled a full second on Ross Banfield, who clearly caught up with traffic. So despite the fact we're now sort of in the window where the soft tyre should be starting to really show its disadvantages to the medium, I'd have to say, Lynn, this traffic is really playing its part in favour of Aussie Milwane's attempts to have a margin versus Banfield before the pit stops.
Yeah, just perfect opportunities to catch the lap traffic, and also getting a really generous of them to pull over in a lot of cases. Oh, Banfield's going to take the strategy pick. He hits from the second position from the medium tire. Now we get to see what kind of tactic he wants to pull right here. This is really early on the mediums, but if he wanted to make it a 3-stop, this would be the perfect spot. Pulls into pit stall number 1 on the track, and we switch over from the mediums to the...
He's going double medium. Okay, interesting. So he's going to try and push a little bit harder on these medium tyres now and make it last another 25 or so laps. That'll get him to around about lap 50. And then he can get on the softs right at the end and have a massive pace advantage. We're going to get another quick replay of something we're told was very close as Banfield gets up to speed. Oh, okay. The exit for Ross Banfield. You can't cross that line, but goodness gracious, he was right on the margin there, Lynn.
If I had to wager, the difference between legal and illegal is literally in the camber. I don't think he touched the paint at all, but it was awfully close, and that has forced a countermeasure from Austin Milwade, wanting to avoid that undercut. He's going to come into the pits right here. This is on schedule for the soft tires right here. Do we see another double spec? Meanwhile, at the field, Ross Banfield has slid off at the first ERS activation zone. That is going to be a time coster right there. Didn't get any damage, but that was time he could not afford to lose. And he's going to get DRS courtesy of being in front of, being behind the car within a second, but still, that was a boo-boo he really didn't make.
Yeah, you'll see him run over the grass here on the entry to the corner. The rear end was already sliding at that point, and then it snapped. And so a little trip through the sand pit there for Ross Banfield. And yeah, you're right, the timing of that was terrible for Banfield. It's basically given an extra 4 or 5 seconds advantage to Aussie Mill Wayne, who now can just mind his own business on those fresh mediums here.
Yeah, now run it long. Shorten up the final stint and go back to soft tyres as you please, because realistically that Banfield was the prime challenger in all of that one there. And so by going to mediums now, perfect strategy call it seems from Aussie Millway. As into the pit lane will come Christian Challoner. Justin Moulton though will continue on to now take a lead a lap of this race. There's a few more cars in the pit lane, but it's Nick Coombe who's gone down a lap. Well, Dave from Dow will follow Challoner in. So these just put a one earlier as a, there we go, indeed. An O. Soft compound tyres go on to Christian Challoner's car. And same for Nathan Dowd. All right, so some drivers trying something a bit different. Maybe a double soft to end their race, if they can make them last.
Yeah, this will be interesting. Challoner, meanwhile, just coming out ahead of Ross Banfield, has now been overtaken by him. As we're getting a black flag for Nick Kuhn, I get the feeling that he ran over the line coming out of the pits there. So now Challoner on the softs, Banfield staying on the mediums here and having to recover from that mistake that he made. It seems like Banfield's second place will definitely be under threat, maybe even potentially looking at finishing third. There is the crossing of the white line there for Nick Kuhn in the number 19. So he'll have to come back into the pits for that potential serving. But for now, it's a battle of soft versus medium here for Banfield and Challoner. Now, Challoner here behind Banfield. He knows that Banfield's going to try and run as long as he can on these mediums. I think Christian's not going to pressure Banfield all that much, Lynn, because from his perspective, yeah, he's on the softer and faster tyres, but trying to go hell for leather and get the position now is not going to work out for him. You know, he might as well just look after the tyres and stay in the slipstream, and then he can have something to fight with at the end.
Yeah, I don't know how much information Challenger is taking in at his side of the sim wheel. He'll know that Dallas Pataska has left the server at this particular point, so he knows something has gone amiss with Pataska's strategy of trying to push his way through. At the same time, I don't know if Challenger necessarily knows that Banfield is at an easy, although let me start that point over again. Knowing that Banfield is right in front of him, he knows something has gone wrong, he just doesn't know what exactly. He doesn't know if it's necessarily he slid or whether he had a slow pit stop. But to your point, he doesn't necessarily need to push right now. He just needs to be harassing, and you see the mind games start to come into play right here. These guys nose to tail in the championship, nose to tail at the front of the field. And we're going to go fastest lap out of Challenger, 1:11.942. That's our first one in the 1:11s at this race.
Yeah, okay, so maybe my point about Challoner backing off in the slipstream and preserving his tyres is moot in the end. We'll have to wait and see, because there was some very aggressive defending from Banfield there to try and break the slipstream. So I think both of these guys know that they could be in danger if they end up making a mistake here. Regardless, the battles continue here. Elder, Jackson and Barber, they still haven't come in for their first pit stop yet. They're making these mediums last, as are Justin Morton and Stephen Verweyen, who's still on the soft tyres he started on. Stephen's doing a very good job of making those tyres last. Whether or not that'll work out for him here in the middle stint remains to be seen. But we'll see what Sebastian Jackson will be able to do here. Still holding on to that slight damage to the front wing. Now, I'll tell you what, Dan, that pit stop coming up for Jackson is going to be a godsend. It'll allow him to repair his front wing, and he'll be able to fight a little further, as Challoner has gotten into third. He's actually passed Banfield, so he wants to try and make use of these softs.
Might as well while the sun shines here at Zandvoort, and just again, also give you that little bit of ease on the tyres as well in terms of the aero wash. We bring up here the strategies from the top 8, and as you can see, indeed, Justin Morton and Sim Verwine, the two drivers in that top 8, yet to come to the pit lane and do at least one pit stop for tyres. Unfortunately, it doesn't perfectly confirm to those who have changed compounds for us, as which you've been told shows the current tyre compound. So unfortunately, it's split the bar up. But as you do remember, basically, Milwayne has completed his compound swap requirement, although likely to go back to softs. Same for Challoner here, for having started mediums and now gone to softs the other way, basically, in this strategy tilt. As 29, also 28 laps done, 29th lap started, and still staying out here on the track.
Indeed. Sebastian Jackson has come into the lane, and he's stopped for, I presume, fresh mediums, and he's definitely gotten the front wing repaired. My timing isn't showing him as showing up as a tyre change. That could be an error on my end, but I'll presume for the time being that Jackson has changed to fresh mediums, because why wouldn't you at this stage?
Yeah, a front wing change right here would probably take the entire tire change. Try to say that fast. And whoop, then he slips up a little bit, whole tires, and he's got to loop it around, not getting heat in them quite quick enough, and making another small mistake. His 5-lap average, and that's kind of messed up Morton right there. His 5-lap average previously was 117.2, which appears to be slowest of all of the cars at this particular point. So I'll be interested to see if he'll be able to get his pace back up and take a look at the Major Series.com replay right there. Oh, Morton just barely got into that right there, able to run around through the marbles. That's also going to slow Morton up a little bit, because he's going to need to take at least a lap to clean those off.
Yeah, indeed. Marbles are a very big factor for these cars. The tyres do throw off a lot of rubber through these corners. F1 tyres are very soft, and the corners here very fast, so you get a lot of debris on the outside of the corners here. Any little trip through those marbles is going to alter your grip for at least half a lap thereafter. Remember, Morton still hasn't pitted for fresh tyres yet. Milwayne is on those fresh mediums, and he is gaining hard.
Something I'm looking at, again, Morton, as you say, has yet to stop on the mediums. His 5-lap average is a 14.4. By comparison, Milwayne, just getting into DRS range right here, is in the 12.9 average, so definitely being able to catch up right here. He's got to have DRS. He's going to have a free shot at Morton right here. Jumps to the inside right there. He's going to pass for the lead right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Milwayne on course to win here at Zandvoort, potentially. It's a very big asterisk next to his name there, because we've got to wait and see what Challoner and Banfield will be able to do. Look at the gains that he's made on Justin Morton there. 2.5 seconds being gained on lap 29. That's how much fresh tyres are worth here. And I'm surprised that Morton hasn't come into the pits already, but I guess maybe, Dan, he's trying to gear up for a mid-race run on softs here to... Easy does it. Maybe he's trying to get a mid-race run on softs going and get that average pace down with a little face.
So on board with him here for a quick look at the replay. Get loose at the rear coming into turn 9, and just able to pull up. It's hard to say here, because he's now already lost a pit stop to Aussie Milwayne by virtue of this strategy call. So. And he's finally 5 seconds ahead of Christian Challoner. So in fact, it looks like yes, he will finally give it up and head to the pits. On a replay there. Unfortunately, I can't read the number. I'm being told it's Kevin Sand. It is Kevin Sand. Oh, I do remember his number. 666 machine, unfortunately, going wide there at turn 13. And thankfully, it's a straight in and out shoot through the gravel there, Lynn. But it's a bit of a moment you don't want at a high speed. This building to high speed. There's a 4-second stop for Morton. He comes out on hards.
Yeah, oh, that's big, isn't it, Len? We're going to get take 2 of drivers trying to make the hards work here. I don't think he's going to be pitting for the rest of the race.
It would appear to be a one-stop strategy from here on out. He has to make that tire last 40 laps, but at the same time, he made his first tires last 30 laps, which is just long enough to make this option work. Maybe it works out if he can keep his 5-lap average within half a second of everybody else. Again, about 20 to 24 seconds lost on a pit stop. Maybe it works out, but as you mentioned, he already lost effectively on pit stop because Milway caught him and passed him on the track.
Whoa. Milwayne, I think, wasn't quite looking at the road there. A little bit of an off at coming up to the start-finish line, but ultimately he'll continue on. Probably a little bit of debris on his tyres as a result. So we'll keep an eye out on the pace here now that most of the field has come in for a stop. Let's see what happened to Milwayne here. So he comes out of the final corner, and yeah, I think he might have been changing a setting. Wasn't quite looking ahead of him, then realised, oh dear, I'm heading towards the wall. Brian Barnes and Stephen Verwaayen now making their stops. Verwaayen absolutely Ironmanning it on the softs here. And I wouldn't be surprised if he changed to hards, but he is going for the mediums. This is potentially another one-stop strategy that we're seeing, but it'll be a lot harder to pull off going on the mediums. We might see him switch back to the softs at the end.
Yeah, but if you're a tire whisperer and you made softs last as long as the mediums did, then I don't see why you couldn't make the mediums last as long as the hards could.
Fair.
Ryan Steele also comes into the pits, and that is going to be switching to the soft compound right there, coming out into the pits. I would expect Steele to be on a two-stop strategy right there with that compound selection. Meanwhile, somewhere here in the middle of the field, I think this is Jake Fox that we're looking at right here. Yeah,
Yes.
that's it. In 13th place. Having a decent, quiet run. He is 1 lap down, but he is keeping the car intact. He will be the next car to pit. He's at 30 laps in the stint. Here he comes, coming to the pits. He's on the mediums right now. Do we see another strategic play to go to the hards? Well, let's find out.
This is, I don't know if he had his pit stop fully set up there. Did you see that he got on the pit speed limiter very early? He's lost crucial time there on the way into the pit lane. It's probably cost him about 2 or 3 seconds, that sort of jumping the gun a little bit on pressing the pit speed limiter button. So it's going to put him down the order even further. He will switch to the softs though, as it looks like Challoner is catching Milwayne fast. He's making those softs work, Dan.
He is. How long can he make them last? We'll have to find out in due course. He's only been on them for 9 laps, so it will be 10 laps around this time by. Milwayne's pace looking pretty consistent there. The last 3 laps in the low to mid 113. It's another half second taken out of him by Challoner. 5-lap average. For your race leader, Lynn is sitting on 113.1, 10-lap average of 113.0, but he's lost 4/10 a lap on average over the last 5 to Christian in second place. So it's potentially worth for Christian to have a charge towards the end with a double soft run.
Yeah, take a look at the speeds right here. Challoner rapidly making his way around the circuit, 250 kilometers down that hill right there, only slowing down to about 120 in these slow sections right here. If that, 130 right there into the DRS activation zone, but he has nobody within a second in front of him. He doesn't get the DRS. So, obviously, running the soft compound tire in this middle stint, as the track is heating up slowly but surely, it's up to 93 degrees, and you notice at that exit of that corner, very slippery with the marbles, sort of kind of strewn all over the place. So, obviously, I think Challoner is in the catbird seat to win this race outright, but you also have to keep an eye on Morton with that gamble. It's going to be kind of a crazy little bit of Vegas right here.
And you would have noticed on that onboard that Christian Challoner did not shift up into 8th gear down the straight, and there's a very good reason he's doing that. The ERS, the energy recovery system on these cars, actually works best on the straights when you're at 100% of the revs in 7th. If you shift up into 8th, you're not recharging the energy as fast. These cars end up harvesting energy through 2 different methods. One is recovering energy from the turbo on acceleration, and the other is recharging kinetic energy recovery on the brakes. So if you don't have anyone in front of you and you're not using DRS, it's often best to just leave the car in 7th.
I learned that one today, then. Just interject there.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's something I didn't know either, and I'm having to run this race on Sunday, so that's good to know for me. Anyway, to your point, Daniel.
Well, really, it's just a case of, that's it. Not something I'd ever thought of, but when you think about it, the physics about it makes plentiful sense. The fact that you're relying there on, let's do more with the turbo boost and turbo spooling and recovery that you from that component, the MGUH in these cars, specifically in real life. So if the turbo is running a little harder in 7th gear, top of 7th gear, rather than dropping down into the middle of your rev range in 8th, therefore it makes a lot of sense. You're able to regain more energy back that way. And it's interesting for me to note there is that with clean air, no DRS, and even with a presumed full throttle for Christian Challoner, you would have noted that at the second half of the straight down into Tarzan Block, Reese still lost speed from that ERS recovery.
Yeah, he did. Man, there's so much management that you've got to do in these cars. You need to know these things inside and out to be able to get the best out of them. Challoner is one of the most experienced in setting up a car. In fact, he's the man who's responsible for many of the default setups on iRacing cars when you load them up for the first time. That's one of his duties as part of iRacing's remote staff. So it's good to see that he's putting that experience to good use here, and he's working himself out very nicely. But yeah, it's an interesting point to make, especially around a track with, let's say, a slower average speed like Zandvoort, on tracks like Monza, where you have super long straights. Yeah, getting up into 8th gear is definitely the way to go, because you're going up to those high speeds anyway. But here at Zandvoort, you got to run high downforce. There's a lot of drag on the car down the straights. You shift up into 8th, you're just going to bleed off speed because you're not getting that energy recovery from the turbo at the lower revs, and the car just doesn't have the power to counteract the drag.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, at least with this generation of cars. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective of things, it goes away with the next set of Formula One regulations. As far as I'm aware, they're going to get rid of DRS, they're going to get rid of this battery management thing, and it's just going to be a pure hybrid system. It's going to be pretty interesting to watch, but here in the here and now, right now, Challenger still 3 to 2/10 a lap faster than Bill Wayne. He took 4/10 that particular lap, so he is closing the gap slowly but surely, and Banfield is following further behind, just a 10th a lap difference there slower. So at this point, with the lap sticking away, we're past halfway. If you're Banfield, what can you do in this particular point? Do you try to run the stick out? What can you do, Dan?
Well, don't forget, for Banfield, he is one of the few drivers. In fact, he's the first driver until he hit Sebastian Jackson in 12th place, who is yet to complete a compound swap. So he will have to go to either the soft or the hard tyre to finish this race off. So for me, and the fact that he's only 17th lap on this current set of mediums, he's going to have to go long, get the lap count down lower so that it's not an absolute agony and tyre-saving adventure that he's going to have to do at the end of the race. And then, for pace reasons, I would be going to the soft to finish off here at the end of this race. Gavin Barber to the pit lane for his first stop, according to my timing screens.
Yeah.
38 laps on that stint.
That's pretty amazing from Gavin Barber. That's well, he's going to switch to the softs. Can he make them last to the end of the race on a one-stop remains to be seen, but a double soft to the end could be a good way to go for Gavin Barber. I mean, he started all the way down at the back of the field on the last couple of rows, and he's already made some good progress. Even with that pit stop, he is still up 7 spots from where he started in P11. So potential for Barber to maybe get into the top 10 by the end. Very interesting strategy there from the MFR number 25.
Probably potentially another car that is looking to do the one stop, obviously going extremely long on the mediums, and if he's able to maintain that kind of tire whispering with these soft compounds, it's not out of the realm of possibility that he can make it the rest of the way, but he also leaves the door open for another quick stop if somehow, someway, another virtual safety car comes out near the end of the race, but the odds of that are going down ever so slowly. Meanwhile, up at the front, Ross Banfield is picking up the pace. He just ran a 1:12.949 the previous lap, and then he comes across the line the next time by for 1:13.1, and that's going to be quicker than both Challenger and Miller in front, so he's obviously looking to close this gap, which was 10 seconds a few minutes ago, and just working his way back up to the field.
Yeah, looking at Challenger, I think 16 laps on those softs. He's potentially bleeding off the pace a little bit here. Have a look at the gains that Banfield's making on Mill Lane. I mean, Banfield has been on those fresh mediums there for 18 laps now. Millwayne out there for 17 laps. It's interesting to see. I think Millwayne potentially, every little lockup counts, doesn't it? I think Millwayne's been pushing very hard out the front, and he could be under pressure from Banfield right at the end here. He'll have 31 laps to go when Millwayne crosses the line.
I think for me, I was reminded, obviously, to not forget the fact that for Jake Fox, that's trouble heading down into Hugenholt's block. He just gets it pulled up there, having taken the spot off Bryce Roberts there at Tarzan Block, turn 1. Thankfully comes out the other side in one piece, and it brings Nick Kuhn to the party. So we've got a 3-way fight for 15th of sorts. It might be a 2-way fight for 16th. Here rapidly, depending on Roberts' pace, as he flings it in to Turner. There's been trouble near pit exit. The 666 of Kevin Santana is lost his entire front end and is back in the pit lane already there. So unfortunately, it looks like for Kevin Santana, unless he's got a spare car handy and is willing to get back out there, that might be his day done here, Reece.
Yeah, looks like it. And what took Santana out was the same thing that we've seen quite a few times in this race, getting on the power out of turn 1. And he didn't hit the curb before he started sliding this time, though. I think he just got on the power a bit too early. Santana had been out there for 7 laps on the softs, but maybe overwhelming the temperature a little bit. Just gets on the gas, and there's a little bump right there that unsettles the car, and off comes the front wing, the nose, and the front suspension too. And the car's having to take avoiding action as a result.
Yeah, if I had to wager, I think the ERS kicked in right as he got the full throttle, and the rear end was not fully settled down, and that's just going to snap the wheel around. Meanwhile, and Stevens has found himself a sand trap. Not uncommon on the beach, but just a little bit in like this, you don't want to be there. It's a little bit dry. It's not hard packed like, say, the sands of Daytona Beach, where you can run on those all day. A little bit soft here. He's lost a little bit of time, but he's still in 13th place.
That was a very lucky escape there for Dan Stevens. There was probably a tyres width, if that, between himself and the barrier at the closest. So well done on Dan to get the speed down and try and get his way out of that gravel trap. He has lost himself time, but he's still in the race, which is what counts. The gap, meanwhile, for the lead is down to 3 seconds. Christian Challoner has been eating time away from Aussie Millwayne as well. There's Challoner in the background right there. The soft tyres working beautifully for our championship leader coming into this round. 19 laps so far on those softs, so they'll be about to reach the period where they start to fall off, but Challoner has made maximum use of them in this middle stint.
He's gone from being third place and not in a position to challenge for the race lead, to taking advantage of Ross Banfield's error to catch him, clear him shortly into the stint, and now race after Aussie Mill Wayne. I think at one point I was trying to say, whilst we were interrupted by Santana's moment there at turn 1, that now, of course, as the fuel burns off and also a little bit the track rubs in a bit more, although temperatures might offset that, can run the soft tyres longer than the drivers did at the start. But of course, there is part of the game here of trying to balance things a little bit as well to not overwork any one particular set of tyres. Although, as we've seen drivers today, some have gambled on longer stops and longer stints to do something a bit different. Mill Wayne, so he's got a bit of traffic in front, but does get DRS on this lap. 13-1, played 13-2 as a result, up at the front of the field anyways.
Yeah, that's the way it is at the front right now. Stevens has come into the lane and he overshot his pit box, unfortunately. He did spend one lap on the mediums and got involved in the crash at the final corner on lap 1, and so he switched to a fresh set of mediums. He made them last for 41 laps, and now he's going to be on the hard tyres to the end, which is an interesting choice there for Dan. We'll have to wait and see how that works out for him. Remember, he is all the way down in the field and only really stands to gain a couple of positions at most. The weather conditions, meanwhile, have plateaued a little bit. The track temperature's been hovering at around 34 Celsius pretty much the whole time. There has been a bit of cloud cover come over at the start of the event, but for now, things are looking stable. That is a lot of wind though, Lynn. About 14, 15 miles per hour coming from the north. That results in quite a headwind coming down the start-finish straight, which I think is the reason why we've seen the slipstream be so intense here.
Yeah, pretty much it is a headwind going down to the front stretch, but also more importantly, it's a tailwind going into turn number 2, which is probably why we saw so many cars slipping up there just now recently. And it's also making these high-paid corners so perilous trying to run them. You catch a gust of wind at the wrong time, and your back end's just going to start slipping around. Going back to Stevens real quick, switching to the hard compound tires. At this late stage of the game, I think he just wants to get to the end of this race. So switching to the hard compound, not necessarily going to be the fastest tire at this particular stage, but it's going to be very consistent. He can lean on it at this point. Meanwhile, Barnes has had a bit of a burner right here. He slipped up. I see all 4 wheels still up on the ground, and both front and rear wing still firmly attached. We'll look at the replay right here from MajorSeries.com. Slips it up right there, and he's able to get it rode up in time. And I think he's going to get away with that with just the loss of time. So again, another early ERS deployment right there, potentially causing a little bit of a slip up, but at that speed, he's okay.
Yeah, he is, and worth pointing out for Barnes as well, he's another one of the drivers who's been trying to make that set of mediums last since the lap 1 crash that he was involved in. So, 43 laps so far spent on those mediums. They will be worn down, and the rears will not be coping very well. But I have to say, Zandvoort, with the nature of the circuit, is probably more front tyre dependent than rear at this stage. Challoner, meanwhile, still making up time, bulk time on Aussie Mill Wayne. The gap's down to 2.5 seconds, and Challoner took, I'd say, around about half a second on Aussie Mill Wayne on the last lap. I would expect both of them to pit very soon. Mill Wayne, 23 laps so far on those mediums. He's still not at the point where they require changing. So I don't know if he's going to be able to hold on to this. Challoner might just get him and pace along.
Something happened to Mill Wayne on this previous lap that caused him to slow down quite a bit. He's only in the 14s now, so I wonder if he's locked the tire up pretty severely at some point, or he's potentially catching that traffic at the wrong time. Meanwhile, taking a look at Challoner, making his way through turns 2 into 3, the high-banked left-hander. No problem at all, and obviously taking huge chunks of time out of Mill Wayne. at this particular point, it's looking better and better for Challenger to go soft here in the end.
I'm looking at Milwane's last lap as well as Jay, and I'm not seeing anything that betrays a big time loss for Aussie. Maybe a slight lock up at Hans Ernst, but that was nothing. So maybe he's run out of energy. He's potentially used up his battery, so maybe he has to spend some time recharging it. It might be one of the reasons why we've seen Challenger catch up so much. Christian seems to be managing the battery really well right now, and in combination with the soft tyres, he's just faster right now. So Jay's saying that Challenger will hit this lap, and it looks like he's correct. Well, Jay's going to be the one getting top marks in the background. Watches enough of these races, and behind him is going to come in Banfield. So this is going to be interesting. Banfield has stayed on the mediums the whole race so far. Challenger maybe will switch back to the mediums or stay on the softs. We'll see what Banfield does in response. Challenger's going back to the softs, and Banfield is going to the softs as well. It's going to be an out-and-out battle between the 78 and the 777 as there's a pass there. That's Justin Morton, I think, getting past a lapped car as Banfield comes out just ahead of him. Morton has already spent 17 laps on those hard tyres, so I think he's going to be watching Banfield and seeing him get ever smaller in his front view here. The soft tyres just have the edge over the hards here.
So now, what answer do you have if you're Milway? You've seen both of the guys behind you pit. You're just ahead of them if you pit right now. Because these guys are just going to get faster and faster from here on out. Does Milway make it to the pits? No. He's going to go for the overcut. It's going to be an interesting call right here. I don't know if it's going to be the right one, but potentially he might be thinking if the more laps that he runs on this stint, the less he has to run on these the next pit stop, and the harder he can run. But meanwhile, Christian Challenger just coming out of the pits. He's on an out lap. He's trying to get these soft tires up to temperature, trying to get away from Banfield, who's only 3 seconds adrift at this particular stage of the game. In this first out lap, yeah, Challenger ran a minute 30.5, which includes some time in the pits. Ross Banfield picked up a second, 129.467.
A little bit of traffic for Challenger as well coming out of Hugenholtz. Slight bit of aero disturbance, but he clears the car very nicely. And we'll see what Challenger does on this lap. Predicted lap a mid-112 at least here for this freshly shod soft tyre runner. Milwain, I'm still keeping an eye on him here. He's about to come up to the last couple of turns. And at this stage, I mean, you mentioned an overcut, Lynn, but I think with the pace advantage on fresh softs, there's basically no overcut possible. Milwain is going to continue on another lap here. So I think the second point you raised is probably the correct one. Milwain is trying to make these mediums last as long as he possibly can so that he can push ever harder on the softs, maybe in the final 10 to 15 laps.
We'll have to see what this first lap is. It's a 1:11.526. Ooh, and Banfield in first into the 110s. If Milwain was planning on staying out the whole way, I don't think that's going to work. He's 3 seconds slower at this particular point. It's a 2.7 seconds. The gap is only 20 from Milwain to Challenger. That's not going to work the rest of this race if he has to stay on these tires.
No, certainly not. Staying out is not an option for Milwain, and pitting is just going to put him back anyway. So I think maybe the only thing he can do from here is commit, excuse me, to another few laps. But every single lap further he completes, he's going to be bleeding that time, and a tourniquet is not going to fix that. So into the pits he will come, and will definitely switch to the softs from here.
Absolutely has to. And I'm a little concerned for him because it's still going to be a 21 lap race to the end for him. That's not a super short stint even with the reduced fuel in these cars. But Challenger's going to race on past. He actually grabs some DRS off the 115 machine of Stuart Elder coming into the pit lane and will easily race to the race lead, and Banfield up into second place as well as he improves to another 110.9. A big snap on the exit there. Lil Wayne trying to get going here, but he needs to now take a lap to settle in and get this car steady. Reese, is he having a couple more moments there on his run through the opening sector by chance?
Yeah, he certainly is. I mean, F1 cars do use tyre warmers, so, or at least this era of Formula One a couple of years ago did, so there will be some temperature in those tyres, but not quite enough to push as hard as he wants on that opening lap. Lil Wayne, of course, just scrubbing off that sheen on the tyres that F1 cars have. You'll notice there's a very dull sheen on these tyres for Banfield, and that's because the tyres have worked their way in. When the tyres are fresh, they are nice and shiny, but that means that there's basically a sort of interface layer when the rubber gets molded as the tyres are manufactured. It's good to see that iRacing simulates that as well.
Yep, it's a neat little quirk of how the Pirellis are manufactured. You may not necessarily see it from other manufacturers as Bryce Roberts comes into the pits. Banfield again setting a fast lap of the race, 1:10.878. He's knocked off that shine, and these tires are absolutely hooked up for him right now. He's having to chase down Challenger the hard way. Yes, he has to win the race, but at this point, it's all Challenger from here on out.
Yeah, Challener's the one with the advantage. He'll try his best here to stay on the soft tyres to the end and make them work. That's a lot of debris, and I think that was a car stopped. Looks like Bryce Roberts that's had a problem in the number 21. Roberts was running 14th at the start of the lap, and it looks like Gerlachbocht has bitten him when he's come out from his final pit stop. Fortunately, no one else was involved in that, but unfortunate for Bryce. He ends his race stuck on the east side of Hugenholtz.
Yep, again, turn number 2, just absolutely biting the car coming off of the pits. It is so easy to get that messed up because first you have to take it easy coming out of the pits because that wall on the outside of pit exit is going to bite you. Ross Banfield again running a purple lap, 1:10.820. As Steele comes into the pits from 12th? No, 9th. His car number is 12. He's in the 9th position. It looks like he's going to switch to another fresh set of softs, and that is going to be the end of Bryce Roberts' day as he disconnects from the servers. We lose yet another car. We've lost 5 thus far, 15 remain.
Indeed. And the drivers who have been running well on the one stop include Justin Morton, Stephen Gawain and Gavin Barber. Sebastian Jackson has taken one pit stop as well, and he's spent most of the race on the medium tyres. Whether he'll find his way back is another matter entirely. Dan Stevens hasn't quite been able to make the hards work for him. He's still down in 15th place, and he doesn't seem to be catching Nick Kuhn at any rate of knots, but the rate of knots is being caught for Christian Challoner. We keep an eye here on battles further back. That's Nathan Dowd and Justin Morton trading places for 4th. Morton now back to 5th. And I think the hard tyres will be starting to not play into his hands. But Banfield right on the back of Challoner. And, he's been burning through those softs, Dan. Challoner, meanwhile, has been managing the pace on the same tyres. And they pitted at the same time as well. So what this tells me is Challoner might be waiting for a final salvo in the final few laps and will be able to fight Banfield back when Ross has worked through the best of his tyres.
Have to think this is what's going to happen. The only issue is potentially the fact that we saw in qualifying Ross Banfield, when it comes to his ability to get the most out of the tyres, is getting something in the order of 6/10 a lap more than what Christian Challoner did. And the qualifying trip was a little bit different story. And good news for Challoner there, he grabbed some DRS off the lap car, Brian Barnes, who jumps into the pit lane. So that's going to protect him here into Tarzan box for another lap, start 56 and 72. But, if he is indeed protecting a tyre, he's not pushing, and this is a case of a different approach to how you run this final stint, then yes, this is exactly what Challoner needs, is just now have Banfield up behind you, for another couple of laps. It'd be a bit more work and a bit more stress on Banfield's front tyres, and then you need to be able to deploy your response in full force to come back. But if it's just a case of pace differential between two drivers, there's a spin, and it's Gavin Barber I'm seeing at Gladbach. He's lost the rear wing, and he's now trapped at Hugenholtz box as well. Up on the racing line too, the driver's going to go down low and off the normal line through the third corner for now as he gets away.
Yeah, variable banking through Hugenholtz. You have to take the high line in order to be fast around here. It seems that there is more to it though, as through the corner he will go, and it seems like Barber may have, is that Elder behind him? Oh, okay.
Ooh.
Oh dear. Right, okay, so Barber lost the rear wing a lot earlier than we expected. That's not ideal, as the lead has changed on live pictures. Banfield is now in front of Challoner, but the championship is still firmly in Challoner's grasp, and Barber finally loses the car through turn 2 there. He was trying his best to keep the pace up, but just couldn't with no downforce on the rear.
Yeah, and he's having a very rough go of it right now. What that incident tells me is that there was a bit of a miscommunication between a lap down car trying to get out of the way and a lead lap car trying to advance their position. And here's I can tell that was a little bit of netcode that resulted in that, because Barber got far worse of it at that stage of the game. He's finally working all the way around to the back to the front. He could have had a chance to potentially get this fixed earlier, but he just was too far ahead of pit entry, and iRacing does not like it if you go countercourse driving.
No, certainly not. And had to make it all the way around the lap with no rear wing on the car. He will get it repaired potentially, unless he's already used his spare, but we'll have to keep an eye on that, as he actually did have the fast repair in hand and is now back out there with a new rear wing. And Sebastian Jackson, it seems, has had a big problem there. The front end of that car is gone. He's only been in that position for a few seconds. So Jackson was running in 10th. Barber has now assumed that position, and I can already see where this is going.
Get around right there going into turn number 3, and that's a very big hit. Again, this car is relatively fragile and doesn't take a lot, but even then, that's a huge impact.
Yeah, pretty massive. Well, Banfield has gotten into the lead, and he's already extending the gap over Challoner. 14 laps will remain when he crosses the line. And at the moment, it seems like the race is in Banfield's hands, but he just needs to be careful of any further difficulties that may arise. Remember, Banfield has been pushing a little harder on those soft tyres than Challoner has. And yes, there is just a flat-out pace difference between these two, but I think Challoner might have a little bit left in his tyres at the end.
But still, again, looking back at the championship fight, Ross Banfield definitely has to win this race. He's doing that right here. Christian Challoner doesn't necessarily need to be in second. He can sit back and chill. He's in the position where he can clinch no matter what Banfield does. And even then, Challoner can fall back all the way to Stephen Verweijen in 7th. It's many, many seconds behind and still clinch this title. So, obviously, Challoner doesn't necessarily need to come up here and fight for it.
He doesn't. And I went back and looked at the incident for Barber, and it looks like the car that made contact with him down the straight was Nathan Dowd, running in P4. It doesn't seem to have hurt Nathan Dowd any. He's still running solid mid-112s. That's not quite on the pace of our top 3, but certainly puts him a solid advantage over everyone behind him, as Milwaukee was the fastest car on that lap. 11.7 for Milwaukee, who's on very fresh soft tyres indeed. I think we'll have to start keeping an eye out for Milwaukee at this point, Dan, because he's only 7 seconds or so behind Ross Banfield, and he could be catching Challoner soon.
Yeah, that will be something to keep an eye out for here in these closing laps. If Challoner doesn't pick up the pace again, as we look at these last 3 laps, half a second. Lap could get a bit of an anomaly, only less than 2 tenths gain, then back to over half a second on lap 59. So watch out here for the closure in this race. And whether Banfield's got anything left to give, as it looks like Jake Fox might have just passed Dan Stevens for 13th place. Once again, soft tyres really showing their dominance now on track here at this stage of the race. And Dan Stevens will have to presumably resign himself to finishing down in 14th now on the hards. As to a replay will go of that movement about there. Around, it was almost thinking the outside through Ari Lewandijk block, but the inside opens up for the one of Tarzan.
Yep, plenty of space being given there. They don't want to get into each other. Of course, Dan being in Australia, there's a bit of a netcode disadvantage if you don't give the requisite amount of space. Probably a bit too much space being given there, but regardless, you can't be too careful at these speeds. Banfield now has his lead up to 2.5 seconds, as we're going to see Sebastian Jackson have a further issue here. The ERS comes on and he flips around. Man, that's something that you really got to be careful of in these cars, Lynn, because you don't actually control necessarily when the electric power comes on. You need to be very careful on the exit of slow corners, particularly when there's bumps and elevation changes involved, because that sudden flick of extra power can catch you out.
Yeah, it kicks on at about 90% throttle, so you do have some control over it, but you have to be very conscious of what you're doing at that particular point. You have too much wheel input into it. When you go to get on the power, that ERS kicks in, and it'll just snap around like we've seen just then and multiple times throughout this race. It's something to keep in mind. You get into a rhythm when you drive. You're used to hitting it at a certain point, but if you've used up the tires at the same time, sometimes it'll slip on you even when the ERS doesn't kick in. These cars are just that sensitive to power changes.
Yeah, you're driving on a knife edge here to take a line from succession. You're walking a tightrope on a straight razor, basically, when you're driving these cars at full pelt around a circuit as difficult as Zandvoort. But we are rapidly reaching the point of 10 laps to go. Ross Banfield leading the race now by over 3 seconds over Christian Challoner. And if there was a pace comeback to project from Challoner, he'd have to start doing it now. I think Banfield's just too far ahead to catch.
It seemed that way, and it's one of those things with this kind of car and tyre combination, and then the possibilities with it is, even when you're setting some barn burners, there is the potential to save tyre. Despite my believe-it estimations that in the case of Banfield pushing hard early and maybe going to have to pay the price at the end of the stint. So there's your top 3 all working their way up past Schleivach now and up towards Masters Box, and all pretty equal distance from each other within a handful of tenths. So it is going to be a question of who makes moves up and down relative to each other at this point in the race, with coming into single-digit laps remaining here for this Grand Prix at Zandvoort.
Yeah, indeed. We'll keep our eyes peeled for any sort of evolution in the top 3. Milwane still pushing as hard as he possibly can, but I think the pace has dropped off a little bit. He might be harvesting some energy for the time being for one final run at Challoner. The gap is about 3.5 seconds between the two of them, and we see the full picture just about of the tyre situation. Our top 4 all on softs. Morton sticking it out there on the hard tyres in 5th, but he just can't match the pace. He's running mid to high 113s when our leaders are running sort of mid 12s to high 11s at best. So it was a good run from Justin Morton. You know, he had to give it a go, and at the very least he'll maintain 5th for the time being. It looks like around about 15 seconds or so back to Austin Peterson. So Morton is definitely safe on those hards.
Yeah, again, to reiterate the point from the top of the program, this hard compound tire is actually one above where they would actually run in real life. The current medium tire is actually what would be the hards in real life, and then softs on the mediums, and then we don't get the actual soft tires, and that makes me sad because I think back a few years ago when we had different colors for each of the compounds. I miss some of those bright pinks and purples for the ultra soft, the hyper softs. You know what? I know this is simple, keeping this off medium hards, but I just want to see some hyper softs again.
Yeah. It'd certainly be interesting to see what kind of pace they'd be able to get at the end of the race on a very light fuel load. That's something that we haven't even talked about with 8 laps to go in a 72-lap race. No refueling in Formula One, so these cars had to start on their race fuel load, and they will be as light as anything here right at the end. It's a good opportunity to get the best out of these cars, and well, if you have new tyres, even better.
Another thing that goes away in real life, they're getting rid of the point for the fastest lap. Not necessarily a factor here in the majors because it still pays 250 points to win the race, and there's no advantage to running the fastest lap. But still, we're getting to the point where there would be a little bit of intrigue on the strategy. And at this point, with Banfield, certainly the fastest car on the track by far, except Milwane's actually still hanging down to the 111, so still a little bit of intrigue left to go if Milwane can somehow clear this 4-second gap that he has to Challenger, but at this point I think everything is just in line.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the running order to the end. Milwane was gaining on Challenger the previous 2 laps before last, but Challenger has come back a little bit now. A little bit of extra data supplied to me from Jay Kennedy, and it looks like the transition point for grip between the softs and the mediums is around about 22 laps into the stint. That's not going to be a factor in these late stages because all of our top 4 are running the softs, but still worth keeping in mind, particularly for Nathan Dowd, who's on the softs right now, and will be reaching that sort of grip fall-off point very shortly indeed. 6 laps to go for Ross Banfield as he comes out of the final corner towards the start-finish line and sets a 1:12.2. That's mighty quick in these late stages of the race. Challenger 2/10 slower, 4/10 slower for Aussie Milwane. So looks like the battle for third might have stalled a little bit.
Inside of 7 laps to go in the race and in the major season for the 2024 year. Christian Challenger working his way around very clearly, unless something catastrophic happens, knock on wood, 250 kilometers around turn 6 into the interior section of this track. You have to think Greece. Just, I think back to, say, Daytona for the Intimidator when Banfield missed the top split. Any number of moments like that where this championship has swung in the way of Challenger, just being even with the little mishap that he had at the end of the race where he ran out of fuel, all sorts of little moments like that where it could have been a lot closer for Banfield. But now at this point, inside of 5 to go, you know, Banfield has done everything he can in this race, but it's just too little too late.
Yeah, exactly. As it stands, Banfield will win the battle, but Challenger will win the war. It's also been pointed out by Mr. Joseph Homan in our YouTube chat that Ross Banfield was very successful in the final round of the season. He's going for his 3rd straight win in the Formula Majors round. So if there's a high-level open wheel on a road course to talk about, Banfield is definitely in the picture. If only the season had gone slightly different for Banfield, we might be looking at crowning a champion with a win. But you never know. Things could still change, Dan. Challoner looks pretty stable in second, but he still has to finish inside the top 8 for him to keep the championship.
That he does. The advantage he's got, of course, though, is that there are some huge gaps behind him. 18 seconds behind Will Wayne to Nathan Doyd, and 11 seconds back from Doyd to Justin Morton, and 26 from Morton to Peterson, 21. So yeah, thankfully that somewhat is a good protection. He can afford to easily get up the spot for Will Wayne should Will Wayne catch him once again, barring the lap 66 deficit that Will Wayne accrued. Is continued to pump 3, 4, 5 tenths a second a lap, and at this rate we'll ride just within DRS on the final lap. Just going to pick up the pace a bit more. That's actually, pardon me, if the pace is going, he won't even get to DRS. It'll be close, but it'll be about 1.5 at the end of the final lap. So a bit of improvement there. Real dig deep moment for Aussie Will Wayne if he wants to get second place back here today.
Everyone just steadily marching forward to the end in their relative positions. And for Banfield, all he has to do is manage the pace to the end now. His lead is over 5 seconds over Christian Challoner. But, yeah, you never know. Will Wayne might be able to catch. It's going to be tough, but if he can pull something out, if he's spent a bit of time harvesting energy, he might be able to have a run at Challoner coming into the final few laps of the race. 3 laps to go up the front here for Ross Banfield. And there is Aussie Will Wayne rapidly chasing down Christian Challoner. Ran a little bit faster on that lap as well. It was only a matter of about half a tenth and change that Will Wayne was able to gain. So I think it might have stalled once again. I think, Len, what's been on Challoner's side, as has been for all of his championship winning seasons in the majors, is consistency. Challoner's just been able to plug away and keep himself in the fight and minimize mistakes, and that's what makes a champion in a series like this.
Yep, and we've come to expect nothing less from Christian Challoner. The former, I keep harping on this, he's a former pro driver in the NASCAR series. Some of the best of the best on the oval side. And he's no slouch here on the road side either. He's at the second in this running order and on pace to win yet another winning trophy. And you think back, he held himself so well against Banfield in the German Grand Prix in the Lotus 49 at the Nordschleife, just battling side by side, nose to tail over the entire length of the green hell. Inside of 3 laps to go here, closing in on yet another title.
Yeah, coming up on 1.5 laps remaining. The gaps have extended to the point that we're not really seeing much in the way of battles. We're just watching the timesheets here, waiting to see if there's any kinds of gains from the likes of Aussie Will Wayne. And really, Will Wayne versus Challoner is the only battle that we can see on track at the moment. And for now, it does look to be in the hands of Christian Challoner. The gap between them coming up to about 3 seconds. So it seems like Will Wayne's pace has dropped off right at the end. Banfield, though, coming into the final couple of corners, is going to see a white flag in the air from Barney. No DRS, nothing of the sort for him, but he's just running a long endurance-style stint for the time being on these soft tyres. He got the move done on Challoner, he kept the pace up, and he is cruising out the front.
As you said earlier, coming up on his 3rd straight form of the majors win. Obviously really skilled at this W13 machine, but I would expect next year it's going to be a super change based off of what I've seen on the schedule. So that's going to be a twist to the mix for the next schedule. And there's might be a little bit of a daytime change, but meanwhile, he's not worried about that. He's just working his way around the second sector right here. No cars around to worry about. He's been catching Jake Fox here, but he's not going to be at risk. So here we are coming into the finish.
Yeah, a long and tough season for both Ross Banfield and Christian Challoner. Ross suffering from circumstances throughout the course of the season. Like I said before, he will win the battle with the P1 position in Formula Majors, but coming out of the final corner, nearly 6 seconds behind, Christian Challoner crosses the line, and he is your Pacific Majors champion for 2024.
I mean, what else can you say? I mean, Challenger has kept this together throughout the year. Yes, there was a couple of wild cards thrown in. And I say that literally. Wild card last round put a damper on Challenger's spirits. The dirt round threw a bit of a curveball right here, but he was able to come back. He maintained that point seed, and he did what he needed to do to secure this championship.
Absolutely brilliant drive, and all he had to do was keep it on the track and be consistent. He had quite a battle on his way through as well in order to get that done, but Challoner 100% a deserving champion. Ross Banfield a more than deserving winner of this round, his third straight Formula Majors win, the final round of the season going to Ross Banfield for the third year in a row. Austin Peterson going to be the first car to finish off the lead lap here, and P6 is his. Peterson making it a very long time on the soft tyres, 23 laps there on that last stint. And with that, everyone has crossed the line, and the 2024 major season in the Pacific region is officially over. Ross Banfield taking victory by 5.8 seconds over Christian Challoner. Some points have been made up by Banfield, but Challoner still well ahead and crowned the champion for 2024. Milwain is going to complete the podium, a very spirited drive and very interesting strategy as well. Certainly would have been a factor for second if things had been a tiny bit different. Dowd and Morton will round out your top five, and they will conclude the cars on the lead lap. Austin Peterson, Stephen Verweyen, Ryan Steele, Stuart Elder, and Gavin Barber rounding out your top 10, Dan. And I have to say, really good recovery from Gavin Barber. Just magnificent drive. He did have his issues, of course, and he finishes 2 laps down, but a top 10 is nothing to sneeze at.
No, it's certainly not. And he'd be one of the drivers that makes up one of the best races in the back half of the field in terms of recovery. You see here over the page our remaining drivers who started this race, and get down to Brian Barnes, Nick Kuhn, Jake Fox, and Dan Stevens, who all finished it to make ourselves 14 finishes from 20 starters. Unfortunately, you then have a host of drivers here whose days fell apart early on or at various points throughout the race. Sebastian Jackson there, 16 laps short of the finish. Bryce Roberts, 22 laps short of the finish. Kevin Santana, 31 laps short of the finish, just getting over halfway in that case. And then our 3 earliest retirements in Dallas Pataska, Joseph Homan and Brenton Foster to round out the 20 starters who took to this track. And unfortunately for those here at the end of the list, didn't make it all the way to the end for various incidents to round out this Formula Majors race here at Zandvoort.
Indeed, and just in time, we see our race winner, Ross Banfield, join us in the commentary box. Masterful drive from you, Ross. That's your 3rd straight Formula Majors win. It must feel good.
Yeah, no, I felt pretty confident going in with this one. It's one of my, I'd say, more competitive cars. I usually tend to punch a little above my weight class with that one. I did doubt myself with the strategy though when everyone was pulling away, and then I was kind of punching myself when I spun out like right out of the pits. So it was a struggle bus. But then I realized Christian was in P2, and I knew that points wise he basically had it in the bag. So I figured I'd just throw caution into the wind on the next stint and just see where it ended up.
Well, ending up in P1, it's an interesting combination, this car and track. Very difficult to make passes happen, and it's all about trying to keep the momentum up through the corners. You would have been running a very high downforce setup, and that would have been putting the tires through the ringer.
Oh yeah, no, you really had to watch the tires on this one. I think that was part of my problem early on, was I was trying to keep up with the guys on softs, and I was burning the fronts on the mediums a little more than I should have. And then once I kind of got into my rhythm again, I was able to conserve the tire a little better.
Well, in the end, the win in the final round and second in the championship. With the international region returning to the majors for next year, are we going to see you stick to Pacific or maybe try to move to another region?
Depends on the hours, honestly. This one works out pretty well for me because the races start about 7 p.m. my time, so I can get dinner done and knock things out. I don't have to worry about, missing out on anything. So if the time stays the same, I'll probably just stick to Pacific. If it changes drastically, maybe I'll look at Atlantic again.
Well, regardless, the silverware is yours for the final round. Ross Banfield, is there anyone you want to give a shout out to before we let you go?
Yeah, just the team. They were super helpful for me on the ovals because I'm basically helpless when it comes to oval sets. So it's nice to be able to ask and poke around and try things out and learn a bit about oval racing. And yeah, just it was nice being able to run with the guys over at UDocs. And also, I'd like to shout out to Christian for being so consistent. Definitely a real challenge. I'm looking forward to our battle next year.
Yeah, a more than deserving race win and runner-up in the championship for 2024 for Ross Banfield. Hopefully, we see you next year.
Oh, you definitely will.
We say goodbye to Ross Banfield for the time being and bring in Christian Challoner, who in the number 78 had consistency and pace on his side as usual and is the 2024 champion for the Majors Pacific region. Congratulations, Christian. You couldn't put up much of a fight for Ross in the last stint on those soft tires, but regardless, it was all about finishing in the top 8 from here. You just had to keep it consistent.
Yeah, I mean that's really what it came down to. It was kind of did one of those patented awesome starts that I do in these Formula One cars again, and didn't go as badly as last year, thankfully, but still not great. And then at the beginning, it was really weird. Like first couple of laps after the safety car, I just had like no pace at all. I mean, I got passed by both Justin and Nathan, and it was the weirdest thing ever. Like all of a sudden, the pace appeared. I passed both of them back, and I really got to say thank you to Christian and Abbott for giving us the lowdown on the strategy, because I don't think I really had the pace for that at all. But I was quite concerned when he said you need to do medium and soft twice, and I thought, well, that sounds a bit like that might not work. But the second stint in the middle was mint on the softs. I don't know where the pace came from there, but it was like balance is great. Drove it past Ross and it was catching Aussie, and I totally didn't expect it to go into the final stint. Just because like those guys were seeing what was happening. So if they'd have done anything other than softs the last stint, then they would have basically just thrown the race. Yeah, honestly, it was a case of I came out ahead of Ross. I knew Ross was extremely fast. I thought about it, fighting it a little bit, and then out of this chicane, just maybe the second to last lap while I was ahead of him, I had like one of those little wiggles, and I just sort of thought, I don't need to do this. Like if I bin it, I'm just completely throwing it, and I don't need to beat him. I just need to not beat myself. So, yeah, I felt a bit weird to not fight it, but I think just risk management and everything made sense not to do it.
Yeah, risk management, I think, is the phrase of the season for you. Of course, a championship like this, lots of little things need to go right to get it done. And certainly the wild card and the dirt round didn't go your way. But I don't know if you'd be able to pick a particular point in the season where you knew that the championship was going to be yours potentially.
Probably Brands Hatch with the Formula Ford, if I'm honest. I felt like that was probably my best chance towards the end of the season to win one from Ross, just because it was, a combination where I felt like I probably had the most experience in that sort of situation with that car in the rain at that track. Because funnily enough, it was actually one of the scenarios that we developed rain around, so had driven it quite a bit. So I felt pretty confident about it. And then obviously as that night progressed, it looked better and better. I didn't really think I was going to win it perhaps, but it just sort of worked out. And after that round, I felt pretty safe. Obviously, I felt quite good at Auto Club, to be honest. It was one of those where I was just hoping to get a top 5 and then kind of just went a bit wrong. I mean, it was really the case that I didn't lose out too much with Auto Club because I had an 8th as my worst oval round, and that was okay. It was mainly coming into this that I knew I could have a good opportunity to get a lot of points just because I had that unbelievable TCR round that we just won't talk about what I did at the end of the race, because that last lap was just probably one of the worst laps I've ever driven, both as a sporting thing with my horrific attempt at a pass into the elbow and then whatever that reversing job was trying to cross the line at the end. So yeah, I knew I could drop that round if I had a good result. And to be honest, it was mainly that. Like I think throughout the season, it's really flipped back and forth between myself and Ross on pace. And to be honest, I think in the second half of the season, Ross was faster a lot of the times. I think Ross had better prep. He often turned up qualifying better than I did. And pace-wise, it was always a case of if it fell the right way, maybe I could beat him. But it was. I mean, like here, I just went in knowing I wasn't gonna beat him. I just knew straight away, like I'm not gonna beat Ross around here. But if I finish in the top 5, then I'm okay. So I think it mainly came down to the early part of the year where I got a lot of good rounds in, got a lot of top 5s. I mean, I haven't really won that many races this year. And to be honest, that's kind of been the trend the past couple of years. I've not really won as many as I used to. I mean, I used to win a lot of races and kind of, I know that sounds a bit weird, but that's really gone away. And I think that's just because the quality of the league has really gone up, especially at the pointy end of the field. I mean, Ozzy was super fast tonight. And we've seen him get better and better. This was a time a while ago where you knew he was going to be fast, but maybe not finish the race. And tonight was really, really impressive. Probably the best race performance I've seen from him. So it's just the league's getting better. Keep trying to get my own teammates to come in and try and race with us as well. And I think it's all it comes down to, that I've kind of switched from trying to win races to just trying to be very consistent.
Well, the floor is yours, Christian. Anyone you want to shout out for your next championship win in the Majors Series?
I actually want to shout out the guys who I'm pretty sure won the team championship from us. So going in the final round, I know that we were behind Dog Bear Bark, and I believe that was Nick Kuhn, Wayne Hutchinson, Brian Barnes, Ryan Steele, and Bob Beltrami in that team. And if I've done the points right, we didn't score enough to beat them tonight. So congrats to those guys for snatching the teams away from us. I know we were actually pretty disappointed about that because we felt like we've had teams on lock for the past couple of years, and I think we'll hopefully get more of us to more rounds next season. We've all just been really busy, and we've been really struggling to get kind of the 3 drivers to turn up. So yeah, congrats to those guys for winning teams. Congrats to Ross for winning the race and just really being just super to race against all season. I mean, that Lotus 49 battle I had with him was probably one of the best races I've had on the service. So yeah, I think if it kind of continues into next season, it'll be really, really good again. It'll be a lot of fun. It'll be really tough. It's getting closer every year in terms of losing, basically. So it's good to see that because it does make it more fun, to be honest. It's nice to have some of the jeopardy going in the rounds. It sounds a bit weird, but it's fun to have that, to not feel like there's nothing attached to it and that you're actually kind of racing for something. So congrats to those guys for teams and Ross. And then also shout out to my teammates. I know Brent didn't have a great round tonight, but he had a ton of pace, just really unraveled early in the race. So unfortunate for him, but I'd like to give him a shout out. Also Austin for kind of returning to the team, coming home with 6th. That was really helpful for us. And then Tom Amrabitis, I know he's been really busy, but not a bit of a race for us, but shout out to him as well. And then Christian Abbott for just that amazing strategy that really saved my night, because I don't think the pace was really there, but the strategy just jumped me right up where I needed to be. And to you guys for broadcasting the league the whole season. I know it's some really long rounds, so thank you for that. And to Mike for organizing it as ever, because it's an amazing league, and I'll be back here next year.
Christian Challoner there, your 2024 champion. Big congratulations to him. And finally, a quick chat to Aussie Milwayne, who crossed the line in third spot. Well, Mr. Milwayne, you certainly tried to put the ringer on Christian and Ross there with that middle stint, but yeah, it seemed a bit difficult to work through it in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I was just hoping for a podium, to be honest with you. But yeah, I led. I want to say about half the race anyway. But yeah, they undercut me there, and yeah, my strategy didn't pay off in the end, of course. But yeah, I'm happy with my result.
As you should be. And ultimately, coming into this final round, a big haul of championship points to end off the season too.
Yeah, I mean, I only ran a couple races at the start of the year, and then the summer got busy, so I figured I'd come back. It looked like a fun event, so I decided about a week ago that I was going to do it, and yeah, I mean, it was fun out there. It was probably a bit boring to watch at times, but it certainly isn't in the car. I mean, I think I only blinked 3 times, but yeah.
You need a lot of concentration around a place like this. Before we let you go, Austin, fantastic podium. Congratulations. And is there anyone that made it possible for you?
Yeah, so my buddy Andrew Waring, we actually sat down about a couple hours before this race, and we ran some numbers and came up with somewhat of a strat and fuel and whatnot. So I got to thank him and staying up for watching. He was crewing for me, and then his computer blue screen, so that didn't help. And yeah, everybody that stayed up to watch, my dad and whoever else.
Aussie Milwayne there, final driver interview for the night to end off another fantastic season of Pacific Majors, Lynn. The international region is going to return starting in January at Daytona, so I don't know if we're going to be together in the comms box again, but this year was fantastic to spend with you.
Yep, it's been a long, arduous year, and one other interesting thing about the majors, probably one of the shortest off seasons in all of motorsports, not just esports, but also real life motorsports as well. And I'm looking at this schedule. I have it over here. I really want to leak this race. So Reese, do me a favor. Can you pick a number between 1 and 12?
7.
Looks like IndyCars in Motegi sometime on the second half of the year. So yes, I'm committing Zarbius. I don't care. It's the last race. I'm having fun. Thank you so much, guys, for letting me hang around with y'all.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, Lynn. And Dan, thank you very much for joining us for the final round, and for also your commentary assistance throughout the year. Another season down, and bring on 2025.
Indeed, it's been good to be here and watch the racing once again in the major series. And I think it might have been the 1967 German Grand Prix. It was the last time I sat down with you guys for most, if not all, of a race there. So to see Ross Banfield come out on top once again in a very different style of Formula car, mind you, very much, yeah, it was a good race to see that. And congratulations, of course, to Christian for taking the series championship there as well to round out this Pacific region season for 2024.
Indeed. Well, we want to thank you all for watching here on SimSpeed TV, the Pacific region of the majors. The season is not quite over for the whole league. The Atlantic region is going live in about 12 hours time, thanks to our friends over on Global Sim Racing Channel. They will be broadcasting the second division of this series. So let's see who gets crowned the Atlantic champion in the end. The team's championship going to Dog Bear Bark, and the drivers championship going to Christian Challoner here in the Pacific region of the Majors series. We want to give a huge shout out to Mike and the admin team for bringing us another season of this fantastic league. And of course, check out majorsseries.com for details on the upcoming season and to get your sign-ups in before the first round at Daytona in 2025. I'm Reese Gardner, Dan Yeaman and Lynn Kinchelow with me in the comms box, and Jay Kennedy behind the scenes here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch and Kick. Bye for now from all of us here on SimSpeed.